Chapter 1606 on the Search. Chapter 1606 on the Search. Author's note. Unedited chapter. In the heart of a chaotic and gravity-warped region of space, Gustav hovered just above the rocky surface of a barren world. It bore no inhabitants. He had finally reached his destination, and beneath him, buried deep within the fractured ground, lay the second vestige of his original power. He could feel it humming like a heartbeat, resonating with the fragments he had already absorbed. This energy was familiar yet ancient, a part of himself he had long forgotten. Taking a deep breath, Gustav reached out and placed his hand against the surface. As soon as his skin made contact, the vestige reacted, sending a surge of power through him. The ground trembled beneath him, cracks snaking across the terrain as the energy rose up like a pulse, fusing into his very being. He closed his eyes, feeling the humanoid-shaped energy wrap around him, absorbing into his core. Every cell in his body seemed to awaken, and the sensation was almost overwhelming. His muscles tensed as a newfound strength coursed through him. It was only a mere extra 1% of his original strength, a fraction of his former glory, but even that small amount felt monumental. The outworldly, in his full power, was beyond what any ordinary being could comprehend, and now, he could feel a sliver of that unimaginable force returning to him. Opening his eyes, Gustav felt the familiar rush of knowledge as another ability from his outworldly repertoire unlocked. He flexed his fingers, the power settling into his veins like a second skin. "Let's see what you've given me this time, ***, he murmured to himself as he took a few steps back from the now dormant vestige. With a single thought, he extended his arm, and the air around him seemed to ripple. A faint, almost invisible sphere of energy enveloped him, flickering with a gentle, silver glow. Gustav clenched his fist, and the sphere expanded, stretching out over the entire landscape. Trees, rocks, and even the distant peaks began to bend under the force of his energy. With a flick of his wrist, he pulled it all back, compressing the sphere around him in a rush that sent a shockwave outward, creating a crater beneath him. "Not bad," he voiced with a satisfied tone. After a few more tests, Gustav leaped into the air, flying back toward his waiting spacecraft. The gravitational density continued to press against him, but it was barely noticeable. He reached the spacecraft and climbed aboard, setting his sights on the next vestige. "One more step closer," he murmured as he fired up the engines. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the universe, a small but robust spacecraft cut through the vast emptiness of space. Inside, Indrik, Rhea, and Circe were discussing the next steps in their journey. Circe had insisted on joining them, and after much debate, Indrik had finally agreed, unable to resist her determined gaze. "All right, team. Hey, race where we're at," Indrik said, leaning over the ship's navigation console. The database came through and cross-referenced the two distinct features that Gustav glimpsed, a hazy teal planet and an unnatural void-like light. Unfortunately, it returned not one, but 4 locations. Rhea, seated across from him with a frown, crossed his arms. 4 locations? That means 3 of them are not correct? "Yes," Indrik confirmed. "Great. We're going to need to hop across the galaxies to check each one." "Bingo," Indrik replied, bringing up a holographic map. "But that's our best shot. We'll need to visit each location and confirm which one actually holds the sword." Circe leaned in with a determined expression. "Determined. Then let's not waste time. We go in, check, and if it's not the one, we move on. Simple." Indrik glanced at her. "You make it sound easy, Circe. You realize these locations aren't exactly next door to each other, right?" Circe shrugged while displaying a smile. "Doesn't matter. We're doing this for Father. I'd fly to the edge of the universe if that's what it takes." Rhea chuckled, nodding approvingly. "You're relentless. I can see why you insisted on coming. But let's just hope these locations aren't crawling with the Alliance's goons, or worse." Indrik pulled up the first destination, pointing to a distant star system marked on the map. "The first one's here, on the outskirts of the Ilvorn galaxy. We'll check it out and go from there. Everyone ready?" "Ready," Circe and Rhea replied in unison. The ship buzzed as Indrik punched in the coordinates, and in an instant, they leaped into hyperspace. The stars outside immediately blurred into streaks of light. After what felt like numerous hours, the ship slowed, emerging from hyperspace on the edge of a star system where the first of the 4 potential locations awaited. Outside the ship, a massive teal-hued planet loomed before them, surrounded by swirling clouds and faint, greenish light that gave the atmosphere an ethereal quality. "Well, that's something," Rhea murmured, staring at the planet. "Almost looks like we're in a dream." Circe's eyes narrowed as she peered out the window. "I don't like it. Something feels off." Indrik nodded in agreement, adjusting the ship scanners. "Let's keep our guard up. This might be the place, but it could also be a trap. Stay sharp, both of you." They descended through the atmosphere, landing in a remote area of the planet's surface where massive, sharp rocks jutted out of the ground like teeth. The surroundings were eerily quiet, with a pale mist clinging to the ground, casting strange shadows across the barren landscape. "We'll check the scanners for any signs of outworldly energy," Indrik said, adjusting the controls. As he worked, Circe and Rhea stepped out of the ship, keeping a close eye on the surrounding terrain. They moved cautiously, their senses on high alert as they scanned the area for any threats. "It's dead silent," Circe whispered, prepared to activate her bloodline at any time. "Too quiet." Rhea nodded. "Yeah, I don't like it either. Shouldn't we have bumped into extraterrestrials by now?" "Indrik, anything on the scanners?" Indrik's voice crackled over their communicators. "No outworldly energy detected yet, but there's a faint residual energy, something that could be connected. It's faint, though. If the sword was here, it's either well hidden or long gone. Let's sweep the area." They spread out, moving through the mist as they searched for any signs of the sword or clues pointing to its whereabouts. Nearly an hour went by with no luck. Indrik could scour the entirety of the planet within seconds, but the mist really made it difficult to cast one's senses like a net across this mysterious world. After some time, Indrik called them back to the ship. "Nothing here. Just a residual energy field. Might be a remnant of some old relic, but not the sword. We're moving to the next location." "Well, at least we're one down," Rhea muttered while climbing back aboard. "3 more to go," Circe sighed, settling into her seat. "Uncle needs to be better with his choices." "Don't call me that." Indrik snapped back. "Sorry, Uncle. You're older than me." "I don't think so, Uncle." "Shut up." "Sorry, Uncle. You little." It almost seemed like Circe was trying to get Indrik mad on purpose, and yet her eyes remained clueless. "You know what? Forget it. Maybe we could crash into a sun and die so I can finally be rid of that godforsaken title," Indrik grumbled as he programmed the coordinates for the next location. "You know, you two really suit each other," Rhea chipped in from behind. "Go fuck yourself, Rhea," Indrik yelled from the pilot's seat. "No, really, think about it." "Shut up. I could become a godfather." "No. Gustav could become an uncle." "You're insane." Rhea kept jabbering away non-stop, and Indrik felt like death would be a very good relief at this moment. "Why did I pick these two?" He questioned his choices while shaking his head. "I hope we don't have to visit all 4. They jumped to hyperspace once more, speeding toward the next destination. As the stars streaked by outside the window, Indrik couldn't help but think about their mission. He knew that finding the sword was crucial, not just for Gustav, but for the fate of the universe itself. The second location took them to a desolate system on the edge of a black hole. The gravitational pull was intense, warping space around them as they approached. "Whoever thought hiding a sword next to a black hole was a good idea deserves a punch," Rhea grumbled. Indrik carefully navigated the ship around the black hole's edge. "Stay focused. We've dealt with black holes before, and this won't be any different. Circe, keep an eye on the scanners. If there's anything here, we'll need to be quick." They circled the black hole, scanning the surrounding debris fields for any signs of the sword. The environment was dangerous, with massive chunks of rock and ice orbiting perilously close to the event horizon. But despite their careful search, they found nothing. "Another dead end," Indrik voiced with a frustrated sigh. Chapter 1607 Identical Locations. Chapter 1607 Identical Locations. Author's note: Unedited chapter, another dead end, Indrik voiced with a frustrated sigh as they finally broke away from the black hole. As Indrik skillfully piloted the ship around the gaping maw of the black hole, his attention was caught by a faint flickering in the distance. Just beyond the swirling gravitational chaos, he spotted a teal-hued planet. It wasn't static, nor was it consistent. It flickered in and out of existence like a mirage at the edge of his vision. "Hold up!" Indrik squinted through the viewport. He tapped a few buttons, magnifying the image, then called out, "Hey, you too, look at this. Do you see that?" Both Rhea and Cersei leaned over his shoulders, staring intently into the viewport. At first, the dark void of space revealed nothing unusual. But then, as if on cue, the teal planet shimmered back into view, hanging in space for a few moments before fading away again. "Did you see it?" Indrik asked, glancing between them with a spark of excitement and concern. Rhea's eyes narrowed. "Yeah, I caught it. That's no ordinary flicker. Planets don't just phase like that," Cersei chipped in. Cersei's expression was a mix of fascination and unease. "It looks like the first planet we checked out, doesn't it? The color, the haziness, everything." Indrik nodded, gripping the controls. "It's weird, but in bringing us in closer. Hang tight." He eased the ship forward, carefully navigating past the intense gravitational forces. The black hole seemed to reach out, tugging at their vessel with an unrelenting grip, but Indrik maintained a steady course, pushing back with his telekinetic energy as they headed towards the flickering teal world. With every second, the planet became more real, until finally, they crossed some unseen threshold and emerged in the planet's atmosphere. The shimmering faded, and the planet solidified, no longer vanishing in and out of existence. The ship touched down with a soft thud. Its engines powered down as Indrik, Rhea, and Cersei prepared to disembark. "All right, keep your guard up," Indrik warned, his voice low and tense. "This place. It looks exactly like the first planet, and that's not a good sign." They exited the ship, stepping onto the surface. The surroundings were almost haunting in their familiarity. Pointed rocks rose from the ground, casting long shadows under the teal sky. A pale mist clung to the ground, curling around their legs and filling the air with an unsettling chill. Cersei glanced around with a wary gaze. "This place, it's identical to the first planet. Same rock formations, same mist, even the light feels the same. It's almost like we're back there." Rhea nodded while scanning the horizon. "I don't like this. It feels like a trick, but we're here now, so let's see what we can find." They split up, moving cautiously through the mist-covered terrain. Every detail seemed eerily familiar, down to the smallest crack in the rocks. They checked each crevice, examined every shadow, searching for any sign of the massive chunk of planet or the sword that Gustav needed. But no matter how thoroughly they searched, they found nothing. It was as if the planet were a hollow shell, an illusion designed to mislead them. Indrik kicked a rock and watched it skid across the ground. "This isn't right. We're going in circles, and there's nothing here." Cersei's voice came through their communicators. "Uncle Rhea, I just checked the northern ridge. It's clear. No signs of anything out of the ordinary." "Same here," Rhea replied, glancing around with a frown. "It's like we're on a ghost planet. This has to be some kind of trap, right?" Indrik sighed while rubbing his temples. "I don't know. There's got to be something we're missing here. Let's give it one more sweep, and if we still don't find anything, we'll regroup and head back to the ship." With heavy hearts and wary eyes, they resumed their search, but the result was the same. No matter how meticulously they combed the landscape, the planet remained barren, devoid of anything that could lead them to Gustav's sword. After another hour of fruitless searching, they returned to the ship, feeling a mixture of frustration and unease. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Gustav was piloting his own vessel, making his way to the next vestige. The gravitational field around him was thick, and the space itself seemed to shimmer, warping in strange patterns as he approached his destination. Just as he was preparing to enter a new galaxy, a flashing light on his control panel signaled an incoming alert. Ahead of him, a series of ships formed a perimeter in space. These were no ordinary vessels. They bore the emblem of the Universal Alliance, an interplanetary coalition led by some of the most powerful worlds, including Earth. This was the same alliance Gustav had a scuffle with in the past. As he approached, one of the ships hailed him, the signal crackling to life on his console. Gustav clicked the communicator, and a gruff voice filled the cockpit. "This is Universal Alliance, Checkpoint Bravo 17. Halt your approach and prepare for inspection." Gustav rolled his eyes while muttering, "Such unnecessary delay." Nevertheless, he complied, slowing the ship to a stop as two Alliance vessels moved alongside him. A screen blinked on, displaying a tall, burly Alliance Corp officer with a bald, scaly head and a scar running down his cheek. His expression was one of forced professionalism, but there was a glint in his eyes that suggested he knew exactly who he was addressing. "Gustav Crimson," the officer voiced with a clipped tone, "will be conducting a routine inspection of your vessel. Stand by." "No problem. Anything to keep the galaxy safe, right?" Gustav replied with dry amusement. The officer's lips tightened, but he said nothing, gesturing to a subordinate to begin the scan. Gustav watched as a bright light washed over his ship, scanning every inch of the vessel's exterior. After a few moments, the officer's face reappeared on the screen. "You're clear, but I advise against flying through restricted regions without checking in at designated checkpoints. You may be a well-known figure, but that doesn't exempt you from Alliance regulations." Gustav smirked while crossing his arms. "Noted. So, what's got the Alliance so riled up? Seems like you're running a pretty tight operation out here." The officer's eyes narrowed slightly. "We're on the lookout for a fugitive. A high-priority target. That's all you need to know." "A high-priority target, huh? Must be serious if it's got you all out here patrolling the middle of nowhere." The officer's face hardened. "Your cooperation is appreciated, Mr. Crimson. We don't need your commentary." Gustav raised his hands in mock surrender. "You never know what could help. I've got places to be anyway. You're good to let me through now, right?" Gustav was being humble, even though he knew none of them could stop him if he wanted to leave. The officer hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "Fine. You're clear. Just remember to be on your best behavior, Mr. Crimson. You might be powerful, but we're still the protectors of the cosmos." As the screen blinked off, Gustav smirked. He fired up the engines, pulling away from the checkpoint with accelerating speed. The gravitational forces resumed pressing down on the spacecraft as it drew closer and closer to the next vestige, but his thoughts lingered on the interaction with the Alliance. The fugitive they mentioned had seemed unimportant in the moment, but the description he had overheard was automatically stored in his mind. It was impossible for him to forget anything after all. Back in their own ship, Indrik, Rhea, and Circe regrouped, silently processing the strange experience on the flickering planet. "This has to be some sort of trick," Rhea voiced in confusion. "The fact that we found two planets with identical environments can't be a coincidence. It was one thing to both have teal looks, but it was something else entirely to have a completely identical ecosystem and environment." Indrik leaned back in his seat, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "Could Nocturnus be behind this? I find it difficult to understand since his powers doesn't have enough potency to create a whole world in this plane." Circe looked between them. "Maybe it's a delay tactic from someone else. If someone knows we're looking for the sword, keeping us here could buy them time to move it." Indrik's expression darkened as he considered her words. "You might be right. If this is a fluke, we need to rescan." Rhea nodded. "Agreed. If this place is a decoy, let's not stick around any longer than we have to." As they prepared the ship for departure, a sense of urgency settled over them. They couldn't afford to waste any more time. If someone was playing tricks here, they needed to isolate the fake from the real as soon as they could and figure out exactly what was going on. Chapter 1608 Alliance Fugitive. Chapter 1608 Alliance Fugitive. Author's note. Unedited chapters. Gustav hovered in deep space as the vast emptiness stretched out endlessly around him, broken only by the faint glimmer of stars. He had reached the next vestige of his power, nestled delicately between two large, icy moons orbiting a distant planet. The vestige pulsed faintly, casting a mythical glow that illuminated the dark surroundings, calling to him with the same sense of familiarity as the others. Without hesitation, he extended his hand, letting the energy of the vestige flow toward him. The force was overwhelming, flooding his being as it merged with him. This particular vestige brought yet another sliver of his original strength, a mere 2%, but it was significant enough to make him feel a surge of power unlike anything he had experienced since reclaiming his fragments. His body pulsed with newfound strength, and he felt yet another of his outworldly abilities unlock within him. After testing the effects of the boost briefly, Gustav turned and flew back to his spacecraft. He still had 5 more he needed to retrieve. He entered the ship, settling back into the cockpit as he set a course back on his path through space. But just as he turned the ship around, his senses caught onto something attaching itself to the ship. The ship's sensors didn't go off, but his senses were too astute for anything to occur without his notice. Something's attached to the ship? He muttered, glancing over the control panel as he searched for the source. But before he could investigate further, the flashing lights on his communicator signaled an incoming transmission. His screen lit up with the familiar insignia of the Universal Alliance, and in the next instant, the ship's speakers filled with a sharp, gruff voice. "This is Checkpoint Bravo 17 of the Universal Alliance. Halt your ship immediately and prepare for inspection." Gustav let out an irritated sigh. Again. Nevertheless, he slowed his ship and waited for the Alliance officers to close in. As before, 2 of their imposing vessels flanked his spacecraft. The same officer from earlier, the tall, scarred man with a stern expression and a hint of something personal in his gaze, appeared on the screen. "Mr. Crimson, we're conducting another search," the officer announced with a curt tone. Gustav raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. "Another search? What a coincidence. I was just thinking of you, officer." The officer's eyes narrowed, clearly unimpressed by Gustav's sarcasm. "Well, be quick about this, Mr. Crimson." Gustav gave a mock sigh, glancing at the scanner display before him. You might want to start your search at the southern part of the ship's hull. I've got a feeling you'll find something interesting there." The officer frowned, giving Gustav a skeptical look before signaling his subordinates. A few moments later, one of the Alliance officers hovered close to the southern edge of the ship, carefully scanning the surface. Suddenly, a figure cloaked in a shimmering, camouflaged layer began to materialize, clinging to the hull. "There!" one of the officers shouted as the figure's camouflage faded, revealing a thin, wiry man with sharp features and a wild look in his eyes. Before anyone could react, the fugitive sprang forward, shoving one of the officers back with a powerful kick and darting into the open void of space. "Stop him!" the officer in command shouted, lunging forward as he aimed a glowing weapon. But the fugitive moved with astonishing speed, warping space around him as he vanished from sight, leaving only a faint ripple in his wake. The officer turned back toward Gustav in anguish. "Mr. Crimson, you're coming with us for harboring a fugitive." Gustav let out a dry laugh, shaking his head. "Harboring? You're not serious, are you? That guy was clinging to the outside of my ship. If I were harboring him, don't you think he'd be, inside?" The officer's face darkened as he spoke with irritation. "Your smart remarks won't save you, Crimson. You're coming with us for questioning, one way or another." Gustav crossed his arms, giving the officer an unimpressed look. "I'd rather not waste my time with that. Stay out of my way if you know what's good for you." Without waiting for a response, Gustav's form shimmered, and in an instant, he vanished from the cockpit, reappearing millions of feet away from his ship. He darted through space at unfathomable speed, closing in on the fleeing fugitive. Ahead of him, he could see the fugitive's silhouette, nothing more than a tiny, distant shape moving at incredible speed. Gustav narrowed his eyes, extending his arm as he channeled his energy, focusing his vision on the figure racing through the stars. "You're not getting away that easily," he murmured while clenching his fist. In the blink of an eye, he accelerated. Closing his fist made space fold around him, making him cross vast distances in a heartbeat. The fugitive was moving fast, but Gustav was faster, and within seconds, he closed the gap, appearing directly behind the man. The fugitive barely had time to react before Gustav's hand shot out, grabbing him by the neck in a vice-like grip. The fugitive gasped, struggling in Gustav's hold, his limbs flailing as he tried to break free. Gustav held him effortlessly with a cold gaze as he tightened his grip just enough to subdue him. "Going somewhere?" Gustav questioned with a smirk. The fugitive's eyes widened in fear, his voice coming out in a strangled gasp. "Let me go. You have no idea who you're dealing with." Gustav raised an eyebrow as his smirk widened. "Oh, I think I have a pretty good idea, but I'm curious. Why hitch a ride on my ship? Seems like a dangerous game for someone so desperate to stay hidden." The fugitive's eyes flickered with panic, but he said nothing. His body tensed as he continued to struggle. Gustav gave him a slight shake, bringing him face to face. "Come on, now. Don't make me work for it. Why were you hiding on my ship?" The fugitive swallowed hard as his face contorted in fear and defiance. "They'll kill me if I go back. I had no choice. I thought you could help." "Help? Now that's funny. I don't make it a habit of helping stowaways, especially ones with bounty hunters on their tails," Gustav replied coolly, his grip unyielding. "But since you're here, maybe you can answer a few questions. Like, what exactly did you do to get the entire Alliance out here looking for you?" The fugitive's expression hardened, and for a moment, Gustav thought he might get an answer. But before the man could speak, a familiar, harsh voice cut through the void. "Mr. Crimson, release the fugitive immediately. This is your last warning." Gustav rolled his eyes as he spotted the Alliance spacecraft closing in on their location. "I've got him under control, officer. But if you want him so badly, come and get him." The Alliance ships closed in rapidly and made a stop not too distant from their position. "Mr. Crimson, you're in violation of Alliance protocol. Release the fugitive and stand down, or we'll use force." Gustav glanced back at the approaching ships with an unamused expression. "You really don't know when to quit, do you? Fine, have it your way." With a flick of his wrist, he loosened his grip on the fugitive just enough to give the man a brief moment of freedom. The fugitive hesitated, glancing between Gustav and the Alliance ships with a desperate expression. Gustav looked at him briefly before speaking with an icy tone. "Run all you want, but if you make trouble for me next time, I won't be as generous." Without waiting for a response, Gustav released the fugitive, watching as he shot off into the distance, vanishing into the void once more. He turned to face the Alliance ships with his arms crossed as he waited for their next move. The officer's face displayed a look of annoyance as he leapt out of the spacecraft. "You let him go? Release the fugitive and stand down. Weren't those your words?" Gustav questioned while raising a brow. "How could why? Now he's gone." The officer was speechless. "You sound like you don't know what you want." Gustav remained unbothered by the current situation. The officer growled in response. "Mr. Crimson, I suggest you return to your ship and prepare for questioning. You have aided and abetted a fugitive today." Gustav raised an eyebrow and replied with a calm voice edged with irritation. "If you think I'm going to waste my time answering your questions, you're sorely mistaken. I have more important things to do than babysit your fugitive. So unless you have something useful to say, I'd suggest you move along." The officer's face turned red with anger, but before he could respond, Gustav's form shimmered, and in an instant, he vanished, reappearing in his ship's cockpit as he activated the engines. "I dare you to stop me." He wanted to see if it repeated on the third planet, or if there was any deviation. Meanwhile, Cersei decided to make her way to one of the quieter rooms of the ship. She knew that of the three, she was the least experienced. Her abilities lagged behind Rhys and Endrix. She sat cross-legged on the floor, closing her eyes as she began to channel her frost-related bloodline. Cold energy seeped from her palms, gathering in a faint mist around her, forming small, delicate snowflakes that drifted down. "I need to be stronger," she whispered to herself, focusing intently as she continued to train. She didn't want to be a liability in this mission. She wanted to be useful. 2 days later, the ship emerged from hyperspace as the coordinates of the third location lit up on their map. Outside, The vastness of the new system stretched out before them, and as they approached the designated planet, Indrik's heart sank. It was identical to the first two planets. The teal-hued atmosphere gave the world a surreal glow, and the pointy rock formations that rose from the surface looked all too familiar. The pale mist that clung to the ground gave the landscape an eerie stillness, and Indrik couldn't shake the creeping sense of dread that had haunted him since the beginning. "Well, here we go again," Rhea muttered in resignation. "Same place, same strange feeling. Want to place any bets on finding nothing here too?" Indrik ignored him, pulling up his scanner as he began to analyze the energy signature of this third planet. He compared it to the reading head taken on the second planet, and though it was similar, there was a subtle variance, a faint difference that added another layer of mystery. "There's a slight shift in the energy signature here," he voiced while frowning. "It's not much, but it's there. We're not dealing with identical planets, just similar ones." Cersei, standing by the viewport, looked out at the landscape with a frown. "Maybe we're on the right track, then. If there's a difference, it could mean we're getting closer to something real." Indrik nodded, though he didn't let himself feel hopeful just yet. "Let's search the area, same as before. Be thorough. We're looking for any signs of the sword or anything out of place." They disembarked, stepping into the unsettlingly familiar landscape. The air was thick with an unnatural chill, and the rocks and jagged formations cast long shadows across the ground. They spread out, each scanning their assigned area cautiously. Hours passed, and once again, they found nothing. But just as they were preparing to regroup, Cersei's voice crackled over the comms. "Indrik, Rhea, there's someone here." Her tone was laced with strain, as if she were struggling. In the background, a loud explosion rang out, echoing across the empty landscape. "Cersei, what's your location?" Rhea asked. "Southern Ridge. Just hurry." Her voice broke off as another boom echoed over the comms. Without hesitation, Indrik blinked, disappearing from his spot and reappearing at the southern ridge in an instant. He arrived just in time to see Cersei's body hurtling through the air. Her figure was illuminated by the faint teal light as she flew back, disoriented. Indrik rushed forward, catching her mid-flight before she hit the ground. "I've got you," he voiced while lowering her gently. Cersei coughed, clutching her ribs as she struggled to speak. Two figures. Dark robes. They came out of nowhere. Indrik looked up, his gaze narrowing as he spotted two shadowed figures in dark robes, their faces obscured. The figures turned, glancing briefly at him before they started to flee, vanishing into the mist as they moved within human speed. "You're not going anywhere," Indrik growled while handing Cersei off to Rhea, who had just arrived. Rhea took Cersei's arm as his casual expression got replaced with a steely look. "I'll look after Cersei." Indrik nodded as he locked onto the fleeing figures. He vanished from his spot in a blink, reappearing directly in the path of the two robed figures as they hurtled through the mist. He raised a hand, and a telekinetic barrier of pure energy sprang up before them, blocking their path. The two figures halted abruptly, and for the first time, Indrik could make out their faces, or rather, the lack thereof. Their features were hidden in shadows, as if they were wrapped in a dark veil, and their eyes glowed faintly with a sinister, otherworldly light. "What are you doing here?" Indrik demanded with a low and unyielding voice. The figures exchanged a glance, then one of them laughed. Their voice emitted a chilling hollow sound that sent a shiver down his spine. "We are here to protect what you seek, time candidate." One of them voiced carried on like a whisper in the wind. Indrik's eyes narrowed. "Protect? So you know about the sword. Where is it?" The second figure tilted his head. "It is beyond your reach, child of time. Turn back, lest you meet the fate of those who came before you." Indrik felt his patience snap. "I'm afraid I can't do that. You will tell me where the sword is." He raised his hand while silvery blue energy glowed in his eyes. "I'll take the information by force if I have to." The two figures merely smirked as their forms started to flicker like phantoms. "Try if you dare, but know that your meddling here is but a pebble cast into an ocean. The ripples will drown you, time candidate." Without waiting, Indrik surged forward, reaching for the nearest figure with a swift motion. But as his hand connected, the figure's form dissolved into mist, dispersing into the air with a haunting laugh. The second figure did the same, vanishing into thin air before he could react. Left standing alone in the mist, Indrik clenched his fists. How the hell did they get away? Indrik thought he had them cornered, but he could no longer sense their presence. Whoever they were, these figures had knowledge of the sword, and the power to evade him with ease. But their words lingered in his mind. It was obvious they knew something. Indrik, Ria's voice came over the comms. "Cersei's all right. She's a bit banged up, but nothing serious. Did you get them?" Chapter 1610, Karmic Temporal String. Chapter 1610, Karmic Temporal String. Author's note. Unedited chapter. Indrik let out a sigh while shaking his head. No, they slipped away. But they knew about the sword. They're protecting it, or at least, keeping it from us. Ria cursed softly. So we're not just dealing with decoy planets. They're playing a bigger game here. Yeah, and we're missing the rules, Indrik muttered. Let's regroup. If they're watching us, we need to be smarter about how we move. In the dimly lit interior of their spacecraft, Cersei sat quietly in one of the rear seats with a dark and pensive expression. She replayed the encounter in her mind. The two robed figures, the explosion, the way Shed been effortlessly thrown across the air, completely outmatched. Despite her training, she couldn't shake the feeling of helplessness. If Shed been stronger, maybe she could have stopped them. Maybe she wouldn't be the weak link. You okay, Cersei? Indrik broke the silence with a question as he glanced at her from the pilot's seat. Cersei forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Yeah, just frustrated. I feel like I messed things up back there. Those robed figures got away, and we're no closer to finding the sword. Maybe if I'd been faster or stronger, we could have. Indrik cut her off with a gentle but firm tone. Cersei, listen to me. This isn't on you. Those two were something else entirely. If anything, I'm amazed you stood your ground as well as you did. Even if all three of us had been there, they'd have slipped away still. They weren't ordinary enemies. Cersei looked down as her fingers fidgeted. But I don't want to be the one holding you guys back. I don't want to be the reason we fail. Ria, leaning back in his seat with his usual casual grin, jumped in with a tone of playfulness and encouragement. Look, Cersei, you're not a weak link. You're the only one who's been smart enough to keep her head on straight this whole mission. You're doing fine. He leaned over and tapped her shoulder playfully. Come on. I know you don't want to miss out on seeing the weird wonders of the universe with us. Stick around. You might end up being the one who saves our lives, you know? Cersei managed a laugh, rolling her eyes. Fine, fine. But I still feel like I need to get stronger. I'll keep pushing myself, and I'm not going to stop until I'm on your level. Indrik smiled and gave her an encouraging nod. Good. But right now you need to stay focused, not locked up in your head. We're all in this together, and no one's carrying more weight than they can handle. Turning his gaze back to the monitor, Indrik studied the data from the previous scans with a look of curiosity. The two robed figures haunted his thoughts, and he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to their appearance than just guarding the sword. They had seemed purposeful, almost protective, but there was no evidence they worked for Nocturnus. Who were they? And why did they seem so intent on keeping the sword away from them? Ria, on the other hand, leaned back as his fingers tapped idly on his thigh. You know, maybe we're thinking too hard about this. This place feels off, sure, but we haven't given it a proper sweep yet. I say we go back out there, give it one more look, and see if there's anything we missed. Indrik nodded, appreciating the suggestion. You're right. We'll need to cover the area thoroughly this time. Every rock, every shadow. We search it all. Cersei, you stay here and keep an eye on things in case anything happens. Ria and I will take a closer look. Got it, Cersei replied, watching them as they prepared to head out once more. She wasn't thrilled to be left behind, but she understood the need to be cautious. With a resolute expression, she gave them a nod. Stay safe out there. And if you find anything, well, let's hope it's a clue and not more trouble. Indrik and Ria stepped out of the spacecraft, descending once again onto the strange, teal-colored landscape. The mist was thick, swirling around their feet like a living thing, and the jagged rocks cast long shadows, creating a surreal and haunting atmosphere. The entire world seemed to hold its breath, silent and watchful, as if it were aware of their presence. "All right, let's split up ****, Endrick said, scanning the landscape with narrowed eyes. "I'll take the east, and you take the west. Keep your comms open, and if you see anything at all, call me." "Copy that," Rhea replied with a grin, giving him a mock salute. He turned and began making his way toward the western part of the ridge. As they scoured the terrain, their search seemed as fruitless as before. Endrick blinked across the area, moving swiftly and scanning every nook and cranny, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. The ground was bare, the rocks undisturbed, and there was no sign of the two robed figures who had attacked Circe. Minutes stretched into hours, and still, they found nothing. "Nothing here, either." Rhea's voice crackled over the comm. "This place is like a bad dream. Just one empty patch after another." Endrick let out a frustrated sigh, but then an idea sparked in his mind. The figures had vanished without leaving any trace of spatial energy behind, something that should have been impossible. Even a spatial expert like E would leave a signature, however faint. But what if he could bridge the gap between their temporal and spatial presence to trace them? Endrick sat on the ground in a crossed-legged format and closed his eyes to focus. He felt his time candidate power within him and channeled it. At that moment, a faint green dot glowed on his forehead, an indication that Husarius, the ancient being residing within him, was ready to assist. "Husarius, are you there? I have an idea, but am going to need your guidance." The deep, rumbling voice of Husarius echoed in his mind. "I am here, Zedric. Speak your plan, and let us see if it is worthy of pursuit." Endrick took a deep breath, explaining, "I want to use a form of temporal rewind, but not on myself. I want to trace their last presence on this world and bind it with my ambience of space and will. I think if I combine these powers, I could create a tether to their past location." Husarius considered the idea and spoke with a calm yet contemplative tone. "A risky endeavor, but one that could bear fruit. Focus on their essence, the faint trace of their existence that still lingers in this space. Let your powers intertwine and reach back through the threads of time." Endrick closed his eyes as his brows furrowed in concentration. He extended his time candidate power, letting it merge with the ambience of space around him, feeling the energy coil and pulse through the surroundings. His time candidate abilities began to reach back, combing through the invisible layers of temporal echoes, seeking a trace of the robed figures. The process was slow and delicate. He held his breath as the combined powers danced, weaving together in a fragile balance. And then, finally, something shifted. A faint glow materialized before him, forming a thin, shimmering string that stretched from the ground where the robed figures had last stood, reaching up into the sky, extending deep into the vast reaches of space. Opening his eyes, Endrick saw the ethereal string, a thin line visible only to him, extending far beyond the planet. "There it is," he murmured with a sense of awe. "A link, a thread of their presence. We can follow it." "Are you seeing this, Rhea?" Endrick questioned. "Seeing what?" Rhea asked back with a look of confusion. Endrick could already tell that it was invisible to everyone else based on Rhea's reaction, but he still answered, "The thread? I guess you can't see it." Rhea appeared by Endrick's side, gazing in the direction of the shimmering string, but he still couldn't see anything. "I'll take your word for it, Endrick, but to me, you're just standing there pointing at thin air." Endrick rolled his eyes, gesturing toward the ship. "It's a trace of their past presence. Get to the ship, we're following this thread. If we're lucky, it'll lead us right to wherever they went." Back inside the ship, Circe met them at the controls with a look of excitement. "Did you really manage to create a link to them? That's incredible, UNC. That's Endrick to you, and yes, it'll lead us somewhere, though I can't say for certain where. But if those figures left this trace, they can't be far from whatever they're protecting. Let's hope it's the sword." Endrick responded with a look of slight reassurance. As he set the course to follow the shimmering thread into the stars, the spacecraft buzzed smoothly. A quiet resolve settled over each of them as they prepared to chase down the mysterious figures once and for all. "Here we go," Rhea voiced while bracing himself in his seat as the ship surged forward, following ghost trails across the galaxy. "Just a typical day, right?" "Exactly," Cersei said with a laugh while her eyes were glued to the screen. Chapter 1611, Taking a Toll. Chapter 1611, Taking a Toll. Author's note. Unedited chapter, following ghost trails across the galaxy. "Just a typical day, right?" Rhea chimed with a look of unseriousness. "Exactly," Cersei said with a laugh while her eyes were glued to the screen. Endrick remained focused, guiding the ship as they pursued the faint thread. The path led them far from the Teal planet, through dense stretches of space where stars gleamed like distant beacons against the dark. In the vast reaches of interstellar space, Gustav's spacecraft was a solitary speck, a tiny vessel threading through the cosmos on its way to the next vestige of his outworldly power. This vestige was far more distant than the previous ones, requiring over a week of travel at top speed. Gustav knew he could attempt to cover the distance faster using his void-piercing boots, but these boots were better suited for pinpoint travel, navigating known locations. This was why it was easier for him to get Endrick and the others back to Earth. In unfamiliar regions, he risked overshooting his destination, ending up several galaxies off course. For now, he was content to let the spacecraft guide him. After all, he couldn't complete the ritual until Endrick and the others located the sword. Gathering the vestiges was only part of his journey. His full power remained locked until all the pieces came together. With the spacecraft on autopilot, Gustav moved to a quiet spot along the corridor, away from the control deck's dim glow. He settled down on the cool metal floor, folding his legs into a meditative stance. He hadn't channeled his bloodline in a while, and as he began to focus, a familiar warmth stirred within him. His thoughts drifted as he relaxed, memories surfacing. Oslav, his old friend, the last of an era, who'd watched him disappear into his journey with a promise that someday he'd return. "Rest in peace, old friend," Gustav murmured with a soft tone in the stillness of the ship. "Endrick's your blood, and hell definitely pass on the legacy." With that, Gustav took a deep breath, channeling his bloodline. His energy began to ripple through him, vibrant and fierce, a potent force that he hadn't fully explored since his return. He could feel that he was hovering at the peak of the fourth step of beta rank, only a small push away from alpha. But he hesitated. The first ascension to alpha rank triggered a powerful phenomenon, a surge of energy so intense that it would overwhelm and likely destroy his surroundings. While he wasn't sentimental about the spacecraft, he wasn't exactly keen on drifting in the void either. For now, it would be best to hold back. As he sat there, lost in his thoughts, the system materialized before him. Dressed in a vibrant red gown, its girl-like appearance smirked at him and her eyes glinted with playful mischief. "You're getting rusty, Gustav," she teased, swirling her gown as she moved in a circle around him. "Sitting on your power like a miser with his gold. What, afraid you'll blow the ship apart? Or just afraid?" Gustav rolled his eyes. "And here I thought I might get a moment's peace. Guess I forgot I'm stuck with a talkative piece of code." "Talkative? Me?" The system feigned offense, placing a hand on her chest in exaggerated surprise. "You wound me. After all, I'm the one guiding you on this grand journey." "Guiding?" Gustav chuckled, raising an eyebrow. "If I remember correctly, you've spent just as much time being absent as you have guiding me. Remind me again how long you've been gone, or is that one of the many great mysteries?" "Perhaps it is," the system chuckled lightly. "Tell me, how is it that amongst everything Dimension 6 revealed to me, your origin wasn't included? The revelation of my outworldly identity and the existence of deities were all revealed, and yet there was not a single hint as to how you, a computerized being capable of giving me the power to increase levels, came into existence," Gustav voiced with a look of curiosity. The system's teasing expression softened slightly, her eyes shifting to a distant look. "Dimension 6, that was..." I spent thousands of years drifting through space, searching for the right host. I saw countless worlds, countless lives, until I finally found Earth and you. Thousands of years, huh? Gustav leaned back with a curious glint in his eyes. And you never thought to give me a straightforward answer about where you came from? You know, most people just tell their story from the start, not in bits and riddles. The system laughed, twirling again. Well, where's the fun in that? And besides, it's not that simple. My origin isn't tied to deities or celestials, nor does it come from any cosmic entity. My existence is unique, let's say. But don't worry, soon enough, you'll understand everything. Soon enough, huh? Gustav's gaze narrowed. Convenient answer. I've spent years unraveling mysteries, but yours still elude me. You show up when you want, disappear when you want, and have this uncanny ability to know things that people shouldn't. You're not exactly an open book. The system shrugged, looking him directly in the eyes. I'm as much of a mystery to you as you are to yourself, Gustav. You've learned about your past, yes, but there's still much you don't know about your own power. You think you understand the outworldly, but there's more to it. I'm here to guide you through that understanding. And when the time is right, you'll know my full purpose too. Gustav's expression hardened slightly. So, what am I supposed to do until then? Just trust that everything will magically make sense? Oh, no. Trust is a luxury, and you've never been one for it. But you're not here by chance, and neither am I. Just keep moving forward. Keep gathering the vestiges, find your sword, and you'll have all the answers you're looking for. With that, she began to fade, her red gown becoming translucent as she vanished into the air, leaving Gustav alone once more. He sighed, running a hand through his hair as he stared into the dim lighting of the corridor. The next day, Gustav returned to the cockpit, his gaze fixed on the endless stretch of stars through the viewport. As he sat, memories continued to surface, weaving through his mind as he pondered the journey ahead. The space outside was dark, but the distant glow of stars painted the void with points of light. Approaching waypoint in 5 days, the ship's AI chimed, interrupting his thoughts. Acknowledged, Gustav replied, absent-mindedly watching as the stars drifted past. He leaned back in his seat, allowing himself a rare moment of quiet as he felt the spacecraft buzz around him. Hours passed as he journeyed deeper into the void, and his mind continued to dwell on his friends, wondering how Indrik and the others were faring. They were scouring distant worlds for the sword despite the obstacles they'd already faced. He hoped they were making progress. Time wasn't on their side. The cold silence of space stretched endlessly around their ship. The darkness was broken only by the pinpricks of distant stars. Indrik, Rhea, and Circe had been following the faint, nearly invisible karmic temporal string for days, tracing its path relentlessly. They hoped it would lead them to the sword Gustav needed, but the journey was starting to take its toll, especially on Indrik. His eyes were fixed on the glowing thread, visible only to him, that stretched out ahead like a faintly pulsating beacon. Each beat took a little more of his energy, draining him with the effort required to maintain the tenuous link. For nearly a week, they had journeyed like this, trusting in the thread to guide them to a place that seemed infinitely far away. Are we there yet? Rhea asked while leaning back in his seat with a dramatic sigh. Indrik shook his head in frustration. No, not yet. And asking every 5 minutes isn't going to get us there any faster, Rhea. Rhea shrugged, unfazed. Hey, I'm just saying, following an invisible thread into nowhere? Not exactly the sightseeing tour I signed up for. Circe shot Rhea a glare, placing a hand on Indrik's shoulder in reassurance. Don't listen to him, uncle. You're doing amazing. Just keep your focus. We're right here with you. Indrik's face dropped even more from hearing this. Her consolation was doing more harm than good. That's Indrik to you, he bellowed. His skin had paled from exhaustion, and his eyes held a flicker of weariness that he was trying hard to mask. They had been pushing through space without rest, and it was starting to show. Another day of non-stop flying past, and Indrik's energy reserves were reaching their limit. His vision started to blur, and the faint thread was beginning to flicker, as if it were about to vanish entirely. Indrik? Cersei's voice was laced with concern as she noticed his hands trembling slightly. Chapter 1612, Stranded. Chapter 1612, Stranded. Author's note. Unedited chapter. Indrik gritted his teeth as he struggled to hold on. I don't know if I can keep this up. The string, it's starting to disappear. I need to stay awake. But, Rhea frowned, noticing Indrik's condition worsening. You're running on fumes, man. If you keep pushing like this, you're going to pass out. Maybe we should stop. Before he could finish, a green dot flashed on Indrik's forehead as Husarius' deep voice echoed in Indrik's mind. If you fall unconscious, the thread will dissipate entirely. Indrik nodded weakly, though his body was already betraying him. He fought to keep his eyes open, but his strength was fading fast. With a final shudder, he lost his grip on the string and his vision went dark as he slumped back in his seat, passing out from pure exhaustion. Indrik, Cersei gasped, rushing over to him as his body went limp. Damn it, he's out cold, Rhea muttered, moving to help her lift Indrik and lay him back against the seat. Guess we're on pause until he wakes up. They settled Indrik as comfortably as they could, securing him in place. Cersei's face was drawn with worry as she glanced at Rhea. He pushed himself too far, she whispered, brushing a stray hair from Indrik's forehead. He's been carrying this entire journey on his shoulders. I wish I could have done more to help. Rhea placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Hey, don't beat yourself up. We all did what we could, and now we let him rest. He'll bounce back soon. With Indrik now asleep, they set about gathering some food and supplies, preparing for when he finally woke up. It was nearly a day before he stirred. His eyes fluttered open to see the concerned faces of Cersei and Rhea hovering over him. No, he exclaimed, trying to sit up. He looked around wildly in search of the thread, but it was gone. The faint glow head held onto for so long had vanished completely. Indrik, calm down, Cersei said gently, while placing a hand on his shoulder to steady him. You're okay. You were exhausted. We had to let you rest. Indrik's face fell in frustration. But the thread, it's gone. We're stranded here, in the middle of nowhere, and we've lost our only lead. Rhea gave him a crooked smile. Hey, look on the bright side. At least you didn't completely collapse on top of the control panel and send us spinning into an asteroid field. Small mercies, right? Indrik's scowl tightened and defeated. I thought I could hold on just a little longer. Now we're stuck, and it's my fault. No, don't even go there, Cersei said firmly, grabbing his hand and squeezing it reassuringly. You got us this far, didn't you? We'll figure something out. But first, you need to eat. Your energy's still low, and starving yourself won't bring the thread back. She handed him a piece of dried fruit, which he took reluctantly, biting into it without enthusiasm. It feels like all that effort was for nothing, he mumbled between bites. We've been flying blind in space for days, and now we have no clue where to go next. Rhea leaned back, crossing his arms as he gave Indrik a thoughtful look. Maybe, maybe not. I mean, come on. These things don't just disappear completely, do they? There's got to be a way to track it again. You created that link once. Maybe there's some other way to pick up the trail. Indrik sighed as his gaze fell to the floor. It's not that simple. The thread was fragile, a temporary connection. Once it's gone, it's gone. I don't know if I can recreate it without that initial spark signature from the previous location. The dim glow of the spacecraft's control panels illuminated the worried expressions of Indrik, Cersei, and Rhea as they floated in the vast emptiness of deep space. For days, they had followed the karmic temporal string, guided by Indrik's abilities. But now, without that faint line stretching ahead, they were truly directionless. Indrik sighed, leaning back in his seat with a look of uncertainty. Cersei broke the silence after a while. Maybe we should just head to the fourth location. It's the last place on our list. Maybe that's where we'll find something. Indrik shook his head. I don't think it'll help. We've checked 3 places already, and all we found were dead ends. If we go there and it's the same, it'll be a waste of time and energy. Cersei's shoulders slumped, disappointment showing in her face. So what, then? Just sit here in the middle of nowhere? Rhea leaned back with his usual casual grin, though his eyes held a glimmer of sincerity. Or we could just keep going forward, right? Follow the path the string pointed in before it disappeared. Who knows? Maybe we're closer than we think. Indrik arched a brow, giving Rhea a sideways look. You're suggesting we fly into empty space with no destination in sight? Rhea shrugged. Why not? We're already in the middle of nowhere. We can either turn back, waste time, or just go with it and see what happens. Worst case, we're still lost. Best case, we find what we're looking for. Indrik rubbed his temples, thinking it over. It's risky, but maybe you're right. We've got nothing to lose at this point. Cersei nodded with a small spark of determination in her eyes. If there's even a chance it'll lead us somewhere, I say we take it. We've come too far to turn back. Indrik exhaled, feeling a small sense of relief in their decision. All right, Rhea, you take the controls. I'll need to conserve my energy in case we run into any trouble. Rhea grinned, sliding into the pilot's seat and cracking his knuckles dramatically. Leave it to me. It'll steer us straight through the void without a hitch. That's what I'm afraid of, Indrik muttered, but he allowed himself a faint smile. He directed Rhea to steer toward the last point head seen the thread, then leaned back in his seat to rest. The days that followed were monotonous and unyielding. The stars outside drifted past as the spacecraft cut through space at a steady pace, but every hour that passed without finding a trace of life or any sign that they were heading in the right direction chipped away at their patience. Rhea, despite his outward cheer, began to feel the uncertain, and even Cersei's optimism wavered. Indrik, how are you holding up? Cersei asked one day as they sat in the cockpit together. Indrik looked up with weary eyes. I'm fine, just frustrated. It's like we're floating in a void, hoping for something to appear out of nowhere. I know it wasn't my idea to follow the direction, but it's starting to feel like a mistake. We made the best choice we could with the information we had, Cersei said reassuringly. Besides, if we give up now, we'll never know how close we might have been. Rhea swung his chair around with a look of encouragement. Let's not stop here. We don't know how close we are. Let's hope you're right. Meanwhile, in a distant part of the universe, Gustav was nearing his next vestige, navigating through a dense region of space filled with cosmic debris and small asteroid fields. The faint, pulsing energy of the vestige drew him forward, and he could feel its power growing stronger with each passing hour. He knew he was close, but something in the surrounding space felt different, off. As he closed in, a low groan echoed through his spacecraft, and a red warning light flashed on the dashboard. Gustav raised a brow, leaning forward to study the message that appeared on the screen. Frowny face, restricted space. Living matter will be affected. Great. Just what I needed, Gustav muttered, tapping the screen. And I suppose living matter includes me. He brought the ship to a halt, staring out into the dark void ahead. The area beyond seemed calm, almost eerily still, as if held in place by some invisible force. But he could sense the vestige on the other side, faint but distinct, calling to him. Just then, the system manifested before him in its familiar girl-like form, dressed in a crimson gown with a mischievous grin. Trouble, she taunted, gliding closer. You could say that, Gustav replied dryly. I need to get past this point to reach the vestige, but apparently, it's a zone where living tissue is affected. Any ideas? The system tilted her head thoughtfully. Oh, surely a big, bad outworldly like you can figure this out. Or maybe the answer is closer than you think. Gustav's brow furrowed. I don't have time for riddles, system. You either speak or keep shut. I can take care of it myself. The system laughed, circling him like a specter. What you need is a workaround. What is it about this restriction that's keeping you out? Is it your body, your energy, or something else? Chapter 1613, The Strange World. Chapter 1613, The Strange World. Author's Note. Unedited chapter. Gustav's eyes narrowed as he considered her words. She always had a way of offering just enough information to guide him, without ever giving him the full answer. It was infuriating, but also helpful. If it's my living essence that's the problem, then I need to find a way to mask it, Gustav mused aloud. Or minimize it, make it undetectable, or just get rid of it altogether. The system nodded approvingly. Now you're thinking, but can you pull it off? Can you temporarily shut down your essence enough to pass undetected? After all, you've never exactly been the quiet type. Gustav smirked as his mind began working through possibilities. If it means getting that vestige, they'll find a way. With this new task in hand, Gustav activated a few of his abilities to experiment. Energy dampening was a common technique, something he had learned in his earlier days, but this situation called for something more advanced, something that would mask his very existence. The silent expanse of space around Gustav was eerie as he initiated a technique that very few would dare attempt. His goal was clear, but the path to it was hazardous. The restriction demanded extreme measures if he wanted to reach the vestige within. Standing alone in his spacecraft, Gustav focused his energy, channeling his outworldly powers to perform a separation technique on himself. A faint, translucent light surrounded him as he pushed his energy outward while his consciousness split in two. His body shuddered as his form divided, creating two distinct entities. One of him remained as he was, alive, breathing, human. The other form, however, took on a twisted, hollow appearance, with his skin taking on a faint grayish hue and his eyes dimmed to a dull glow. This was an undead version of himself, a being devoid of true living essence. He looked at his undead form, inspecting it with a critical eye. "All right, you're my ticket in," he murmured, watching as the undead Gustav mirrored his movements. "You will, or rather I will bring that vestige back to me." The undead version gave a slight nod. It was like Gustav's consciousness was split in two as well. Gustav left his other self outside as his undead version approached the barrier using the spacecraft. Unlike his living form, the undead body slipped past the boundary with ease, unaffected by the force that kept all living things at bay. "Good," Gustav, undead form, whispered to himself forward from within the spacecraft as it continued to drift forward. As they approached the deeper part of the restricted zone, the vessel's instruments began to fluctuate. The metallic frame shuddered under the strain of the intense energy field surrounding them. "Hold together," Gustav muttered, gripping the controls. Despite its lack of life, the spacecraft was starting to feel the pressure. It wasn't as severe as it would have been for a living creature, but the sheer force of the restriction was wearing down the machinery, piece by piece. Finally, after a long, grueling journey, the craft could go no further. Gustav gritted his teeth as he ordered his undead self to disembark, leaving the craft behind. As the undead version of himself drifted away from the vessel, he continued forward alone. Almost there, Gustav thought, watching through his connection with his undead self. The journey was slow, but he forced himself forward, inch by inch. After what felt like an eternity, the figure of the vestige finally came into view. Encased in a stone-like shell, it looked like a statue, pulsing faintly with the energy of his outworldly essence. But as the undead Gustav reached out, a realization hit him. "I can't absorb it," he muttered to himself. The undead form lacked the necessary connection to his living essence, making direct absorption impossible. "Looks like I need to bring it back to me," Gustav voiced with a hint of frustration. With no other choice, he directed his undead self to lift the vestige statue. Meanwhile, in another part of the galaxy, Indrik, Rhea, and Circe had landed on an unknown, vibrant planet. Thick green foliage covered the ground, and enormous trees stretched toward a violet sky, their leaves gleaming in various shades of purple and blue. Strange, iridescent creatures moved between the trees, their eyes glowing with an intelligence that was more instinctual than sentient. "Well, we're definitely not on one of the dead planets we've seen before," Circe murmured, glancing around at the vibrant surroundings. "No kidding," Rhea added, leaning against a tree and observing a creature with fur that shifted colors, moving in and out of the shadows. "It's like a jungle out here, except everything wants to eat you." Indrik sighed, crossing his arms. "All right, we don't know if this is where we're supposed to be, but we're here now." Let's keep our eyes open for anything that might hint at the sword's location. Cersei tilted her head, looking around warily. Should we try asking the locals? She gestured to a massive, four-legged beast with dark scales and 3 eyes, watching them from a distance. I doubt they're the chatty type, Indrik replied, raising an eyebrow. These creatures look like they'd rather eat us than talk to us. Rhea smirked. Still, can't hurt to try, can it? Maybe we could use Cersei as bait. You know, lure one over and see if it wants to have a friendly conversation. Cersei shot him a glare. You volunteer to be the bait, Rhea. I'll happily watch from a safe distance. Indrik held up a hand to cut off their banter, his gaze sharp as he scanned the surroundings. Focus, both of you. Let's spread out and see what we can find. Keep your comms open in case you spot anything unusual. They moved cautiously through the dense jungle, stepping over roots as thick as tree trunks and pushing aside massive, shimmering leaves that released a fragrant, almost hypnotic scent. The ground was alive with small, scurrying creatures, their beady eyes following the trio as they passed. Cersei knelt down to examine a patch of glowing blue moss, touching it carefully. This place, it's almost like it's from another dimension. The flora and fauna don't match anything I've seen before. Rhea shrugged, keeping a wary eye on the trees above them. Well, if there's some creepy dimension where weird-robed figures and magical swords like to hang out, let's hope it's this. Indrik's gaze was steely. Whoever those figures were, they seemed determined to keep the sword hidden. If they're connected to this place, we might find some sign of them here. They continued their search, moving deeper into the jungle. Hours passed, but they found little more than strange plants and the ever-watchful eyes of the local wildlife. Frustration began to simmer as their efforts proved fruitless. Cersei exhaled heavily, brushing a hand over her forehead. Are we sure we're not just wandering aimlessly? Rhea nodded, tossing a small stone at a nearby tree. Yeah, we could spend a lifetime here and still find nothing. They had hoped to find a clue here, but hours had passed, and their efforts were leading nowhere. Maybe we're on the wrong track, she murmured, looking around. This place just doesn't feel right. Indrik, who had been deep in thought, shook his head slowly. It's strange, yes, but we can't just turn back now. There has to be a reason we're here. Those robed figures we saw, they must have been protecting something. Maybe they left a trace. Rhea flashed a grin. Or maybe they just have a weird sense of direction. What if we're just wandering aimlessly while they're laughing somewhere, watching us on some cosmic monitor? Cersei chuckled lightly, but Indrik remained focused. He knew they couldn't abandon their search without exhausting every lead. Let's spread out again, but stay within sight, Indrik instructed. If we cover more ground, we might be able to find some kind of clue. Anything unusual, call it in. The trio began a careful sweep of the area. Rhea ventured toward a nearby clearing, examining the rocks and unusual markings etched into the trees. Indrik, I don't think we're going to find anything here, Cersei called over the comm. There's nothing even remotely close to the other world's energy signature. It's like they left no trail at all. Indrik frowned, a sinking feeling settling in his stomach. Maybe they're hiding it with some kind of cloaking mechanism. These beings seemed powerful enough. Suddenly, Rhea's voice broke in, a mix of confusion and concern. Indrik? Cersei? You two might want to see this. Indrik and Cersei exchanged glances before hurrying over to Rhea's location. When they reached him, they found him standing in front of a massive stone structure partially hidden by the foliage. Carvings covered its surface, symbols twisting and winding in patterns that seemed to move under their gaze. What is this? Cersei whispered, stepping closer to inspect the symbols. Indrik reached out, running his fingers over the carvings. The stone was cold to the touch, but he felt a faint vibration beneath the surface, a kind of ancient energy that sent a chill down his spine. Chapter 1614, Reconstructing the String. Chapter 1614, Reconstructing the String. Author's note. Unedited chapter. Indrik, Cersei, and Rhea stood before the massive stone carvings as the cold vibrations of ancient energy pulsed under Indrik's fingertips. He could feel it, a distinct, almost electric resonance that was eerily similar to the energy Head tapped into when creating the karmic temporal string. It was as if the very stones held the memory of those dark-robed figures who had tried to mislead them. "This is it," he murmured, eyes narrowing as he pressed his hand against the carvings. "They've been here before. I can feel it. This place, it's connected to them somehow. I can finally recreate the string." Ria's eyes lit up with excitement. "So we're finally on track again? About time. Let's get this thing going." Cersei smiled in relief. "I was beginning to think we'd be wandering aimlessly forever. Let's do it, UNC." Indrik closed his eyes, focusing all his energy into his core. His forehead emitted a greenish glow as he let his mind draw on the familiar patterns of the karmic string. Time energy mixed with space to pull back a layer from the past and use it to create a link. He felt the ancient energy align with his own. A faint shimmer appeared before him, like a silvery thread hanging in midair, slowly weaving into existence. The others watched in awe as the string solidified, glowing faintly, stretching outward as if pointing the way to their next destination. But before the string could fully manifest, a deep rumble shook the ground beneath them, and the sound of heavy, echoing footsteps filled the air. Guys? We've got company," Ria said as the shadows around them shifted. From between the trees and dense foliage, massive creatures emerged, their eyes glowing with a fierce intelligence. Each creature stood at least 20 feet tall, with bodies covered in coarse, blackened fur and scales. They had elongated limbs, tipped with razor-sharp claws that scraped against the stones as they moved. Their heads were a bizarre fusion of feline and reptilian features, with wide jaws full of serrated teeth and nostrils that flared with each heavy breath. Their tails lashed behind them like whips, creating gusts of wind that shook the trees and plants. "What the hell are these things?" Cersei's voice tinged with both fear and awe. "I don't know, but they don't look friendly," Ria replied while taking a step forward. "Indrik, you focus on creating that string. We'll handle these guys." Indrik nodded, closing his eyes and deepening his concentration. The creatures seemed to sense his power. Their eyes narrowed as they fixated on him, drawn to the energy he was channeling. With a guttural roar, the creatures lunged forward, their footsteps shaking the ground. Cersei stepped in front of Indrik, her eyes narrowing as she raised her hand. A wave of frost shot from her palm, expanding into a thick sheet of ice that raced across the ground, intending to freeze the approaching beasts. But as the frost neared them, it faded, barely reaching a fraction of its usual potency. Cersei gasped as her frost only managed to cover a small patch of ground. "My frost? It's not working like it should," she exclaimed while gritting her teeth. "These things are sapping my strength somehow." Ria clenched his fists while his eyes narrowed in on them. "They have a presence that weakens everything around them. It's like they're pulling the life right out of the air." With a determined yell, Ria raised his arms, focusing his power to reshape the rocky terrain around him. Normally, he could manipulate the earth with ease, forming rocks into weapons or completely disintegrating the ground ahead, but now his ability felt sluggish, as if the very ground resisted his touch. Gritting his teeth, he managed to form a handful of pointy stone spears and hurled them toward the creatures. One of the beasts swatted the spears aside, roaring as it charged toward them, its eyes fixed on Indrik. Cersei stepped in its path, channeling every ounce of her frost power, creating a wall of ice that crackled as it rose. The beast collided with the wall, smashing through it with a thunderous crash, sending shards of ice scattering across the ground. "Damn it, they're too strong," Cersei shouted while dodging a swipe from the creature's claws. Ria leaped in, swinging a massive stone hammerhead just managed to form. "Let's see how you like this," he yelled while slamming the hammer down onto one of the beast's heads with a resounding crash. The creature staggered, shaking its head as if dazed, but quickly recovered, lunging at Ria with a furious roar. While Cersei and Ria battled the beasts, Indrik's focus remained unbroken. The string was nearly complete. Its shimmering thread stretched out into the distance, pointing the way. He could feel the energy of the ancient carvings merging with his own, the connection between him and the string growing stronger. Almost there. Just a bit more, he whispered as beads of sweat formed on his forehead. But the beasts weren't letting up. One of them clawed through the ground, sending a shockwave that caused Circe to stumble back. She narrowly avoided a swipe from another creature's tail. Retaliating with a shard of ice she managed to form in her hand, thrusting it into the creature's flank. The beast let out a pained screech but retaliated, its claws slashing toward her. "Indrik, hurry up!" she yelled before dodging another attack. The string glowed brighter as Indrik channeled his last reserves of energy into it. "Just a few more seconds," he called, feeling the string solidify with its direction now fully established. With a final pulse of energy, the karmic temporal string was complete, stretching forward like a beacon in the darkness. "Got it. The string is set. Let's move." Indrik shouted while opening his eyes. Rhea grinned, ducking under a claw swipe from one of the beasts. "About time. Let's get out of here." They immediately turned around and sprinted through the jungle, dodging the creatures as best they could. The beasts pursued them, roaring in frustration, but the group managed to stay just ahead, doing their best to avoid another clash with these insane creatures. Meanwhile, light years away, Gustav was nearing the edge of the restricted zone. The undead version of himself carried the vestige and statue form back to his location. But as the undead Gustav approached, the radar on his spacecraft pinged, and Gustav's eyes narrowed as a swarm of small, agile ships surrounded him. "Space pirates," he muttered, watching as the ships closed in. These were ragged vessels, mismatched metal plating and haphazardly modified engines giving them a rough, almost cobbled-together appearance. The pirates themselves appeared on his monitor, a mix of various species with sneers and grins, each with a glint of greed in their eyes as they stared at the vestige. A gruff voice crackled over the comms, distorted by static. "That's quite a pretty piece you've got there, friend. Why don't you hand it over, and maybe we won't blast you to bits?" Gustav smirked, unfazed. "I think you're biting off more than you can chew, friend." Another pirate, a lizard-like being with scales that shimmered dark blue, hissed, "Big talk for someone surrounded. Surrender the statue, and we might consider letting you live." Apparently these pirates had gotten wind of treasure hiding deep within that restricted zone for a long time but couldn't retrieve it, so they placed a beacon that would alert them if someone was to ever breach that part of space. Gustav rolled his shoulders as a faint smile appeared on his face. "Well, since you put it that way." He raised his hand, and in a burst of light, merged with his undead form, his power surging as the vestige statue returned to his grasp. The pirates paused as their expressions changed from smug confidence to worry, watching Gustav's aura intensify. One of the pirate leaders, a massive, horned brute with red skin, barked an order. "Take him down. We'll pry that treasure from his corpse if we have to." In unison, the pirate ships opened fire, beams of energy and projectiles filling the space around him. Gustav moved with blinding speed, evading the attacks with ease. His movements were almost casual as he dodged their assaults. With a flick of his wrist, he sent out a pulse of energy that rippled through space, pushing the ships back with sheer force. One of the smaller ships spiraled out of control, crashing into a nearby vessel. The explosion cast a fiery glow across the darkness. Gustav chuckled, watching the panic spread among the pirates. "You were warned you. Do not blame me for what is about to happen," Gustav voiced with a chilly and unyielding tone. In the next instant, he extended his hand, forming a sphere of energy that glowed with intense heat. He hurled it toward the nearest cluster of pirate ships, causing the sphere to explode on impact and sending shrapnel and fire across the battlefield. Do not forget to check out my audio series on Pocket FM. The Sin System, Novel Coal Pocket FM. One link. me/2ie7/e5 Daijo. The void rippled and shimmered as he manipulated it, bending it into an intricate shape before releasing it. Just as he was about to step back into his spacecraft, faint whispers began to fill the silence of space. They were like a breeze in the void, soft and unintelligible at first. Outworldly, outworldly. Gustav's head tilted slightly as his brow furrowed. He scanned the space around him but saw nothing. The whispers continued, growing louder with every passing second. We beseech thee, outworldly. Who's there? Show yourselves. His voice echoed into the emptiness, calm yet commanding. The whispers didn't respond directly, but continued their haunting chant. Gustav's perception spread outward like a web, scanning for the source of the voices. The whispers, however, seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, as if the very fabric of space was speaking to him. This better not be another trick of Nocturnus, Gustav muttered. But as soon as the words left his lips, the space around him shimmered. The stars bent and warped, as though the cosmos itself were folding in on him. A sudden vortex of energy spiraled into existence. Its pull was irresistible. The vortex dragged him in, and he vanished from sight, leaving the debris field and his spacecraft behind. Meanwhile, aboard a Gustavo Alliance space vessel. The Gustavo Alliance space vessel was a floating fortress in the middle of an asteroid cluster. Its metallic exteriors shimmered faintly, reinforced with alien alloys and pulsating with glowing conduits of energy that coursed along its hull. Inside, the corridors were well-constructed yet foreboding, with dim, ambient lighting and narrow passageways lined with pipes and panels humming with power. Symbols of allegiance to the Gustavo Alliance were etched into the walls, angular, sharp designs that radiated menace. In the shadows of one of these corridors, EE and Angie crept silently with synchronized movements. EE's demeanor was calm but his eyes sharp, glanced around before whispering, "The control room should be 3 levels up from here. How's your speed holding up?" Angie smirked as her silver and pink hair glowed faintly in the dim light. "Please, I could do this all day. Just don't slow me down." EE chuckled under his breath. "I'm the one keeping us hidden. Without me, you'd be zooming into the arms of those Gustavo lackeys." Angie rolled her eyes playfully but nodded. "Fair enough. Let's move." Angie grabbed EE by the waist and, in an instant, her body blurred instantly as they vanished from sight. The speed was so intense that the metallic walls became streaks of silver around them. She dashed through multiple hallways in a matter of moments, coming to a halt at a darkened corner when they encountered a patrolling Gustavo Alliance official. He was a tall, armored alien with emerald green scales and 4 glowing eyes. Its claws clinked against the metallic floor as it scanned the area with a glowing device. EE raised his hand, summoning a small vortex silently just behind the officer's head. The vortex expanded slightly, creating a momentary distraction. The officer turned toward the strange distortion, giving Angie just enough time to blur past with EE in tow. They arrived at an intersection where the hallway split into 3 paths. EE pulled up a holographic map, causing a faint blue glow to illuminate their faces. "Straight ahead. The main control room is just beyond that central chamber," EE said, pointing to the route. "But there's bound to be more guards up ahead." "Well, need to." Before he could finish, a low hum reverberated through the air, followed by heavy footsteps approaching from behind. Angie's sharp ears picked up the sound instantly. "Company's coming," she whispered. "Fast. What's the plan?" EE smirked as his fingers weaved through the air. "You go ahead and blitz through the guards. They'll deal with whoever's behind us. They won't know what hit them." "Got it," Angie nodded. She darted forward in a blur, increasing her speed to the extent that the gust of wind she left behind extinguished the dim lights in the hallway. The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly around the small spacecraft housing Eldris, Elevra, and Falco. The ship groaned softly as they cruised through a debris-laden asteroid belt, keeping their distance from a massive Gustavo Alliance vessel looming in the distance. The Alliance ship was a fortress in space, bristling with weaponry and radiating an ominous presence. Inside the small craft, Elevra adjusted the holographic communication panel as her third eye glowed faintly. They had established a secure connection with EE and Angie, who were aboard the Alliance vessel. "Are you in position yet?" Elevra questioned with a tone of urgency. The holographic display flickered to life, showing E crouched in a shadowy corridor aboard the Alliance ship. Beside him, Angie's silver and pink hair shimmered while her keen eyes scanned their surroundings. "We're almost there," E whispered with a low voice to avoid detection. "Just one more level up and we'll reach the control room. How's it looking on your end?" Eldris leaned forward in his seat as he surveyed the display. "We're staying just out of their radar range. Any sign they've picked up on you?" "Not yet. It came close, though," Angie replied. "But even if they do, they won't catch us. We're too fast for them." Falco chuckled from his seat as his jet-black hair cascaded over his shoulders. "Just don't get caught before you lock that engine down. We've got a lot riding on this." "Trust me, Falco," Angie shot back, smirking. "We've got this. You just focus on your part." Alevera's face remained serious. "Once you've locked the engines, notify us immediately. We need to ensure the ship stays within range for extraction if things go sideways." "Will do," EE said while glancing at Angie. "Let's move. Stay on comms. Do not forget to check out my audio series on Pocket FM. The Sin System, Novel Coal Pocket FM. One link. me/2IE7/E5 Daijo will do a mass release once it gets to 10K plays. Chapter 1616, Not Very Subtle. Chapter 1616, Not Very Subtle. Author's Note. Unedited chapter. E pulled up a holographic map from his wrist device. 2 more turns and 1 more level up. Stay sharp. They might have motion sensors in this sector. Angie nodded as she prepared to sprint. "Got it. They'll clear the path. Try to keep up." Before E could respond, she blurred into motion. With a speed that didn't even leave an afterimage, she darted down the corridor, disabling a surveillance camera with a flick of her hand before pausing at the next junction. She had been so quick that she wasn't even caught in the camera, almost like she was invisible. "Clear," she whispered into her comms. I followed, stepping through a small vortex that opened just in front of him, allowing him to traverse the distance in an instant. He appeared beside Angie, glancing down the corridor to ensure it was truly clear. "Remind me to never race you," he muttered, earning a smirk from her. "You'd lose, obviously. Now, let's go." Back in their own vessel, Eldris, Alevera, and Falco monitored the operation closely. The holographic map of the Alliance ship displayed the positions of E and Angie as small glowing dots, moving steadily toward their target. "They're making good progress," Eldris noted with a calm tone. "As long as they avoid detection, this should go smoothly." "If it goes smoothly, it won't feel like us," Falco joked while leaning back in his seat. "Something always goes wrong. It's practically tradition." Alevera shot him a look as her third eye narrowed slightly. "Not this time. This operation has to be perfect. If we fail, the Gustavo Alliance will know we're onto them, and they'll scatter. It'll take years to regroup." Falco sighed, raising his hands in mock surrender. "Relax, Alevera. I'm just saying. But yeah, you're right. No room for screw-ups." Eldris leaned closer to the console. "Angie and E are capable. Let's trust them to do their part while we prepare for ours. Alevera, keep an eye on the radar. If the Alliance detects us, we'll need to move quickly. Falco, double-check the ship's cloaking field. We can't afford to be seen." "On it," Falco voiced while moving to another console. Alevera's expression softened slightly as she returned her focus to the radar. E and Angie reached the final corridor leading to the control room. The air here was different, charged with a faint static that made the hairs on their arms stand on end. E observed as his gaze scanned the walls. "There's a laser grid further ahead. We can't just walk through." "No problem," Angie said confidently. "We'll go through it. You do your vortex thing." E raised an eyebrow. "You're just going to run past the laser grid? Those things are faster than—" Angie cut him off with a smirk. "Faster than me? Please, watch and learn." Before E could protest, Angie blurred forward. Her body moved so quickly that the laser beams didn't have time to register her presence. She skidded to a halt on the other side, grinning as she turned back to him. "Told you. Now hurry up, slowpoke." He sighed while shaking his head. Show off. He raised his hand, opening a small vortex that allowed him to step past the grid effortlessly. They regrouped on the other side, locking onto the massive doors ahead. That's it, he said, his tone serious. Once we're in, we lock the engines and send word to the others. Angie nodded with a straight look. Let's do this. Together, they approached the doors, their next move critical to the success of the operation. Angie soon crouched beside E in the shadows outside the control room with their eyes locked on the thick metallic doors. Are you sure this bypassing tech is going to work? Angie whispered in impatience as she adjusted her gloves. He smirked, holding up a cylindrical device that pulsed faintly with blue light. Trust me, it's top-notch. It'll get us through without a hitch. Angie raised a brow as her silver and pink hair caught the faint glow of a nearby conduit. You said that about the last one, and I had to run through those laser grids. Imagine if I got fried. He let out a light, embarrassed cough. It will work this time. Just stay sharp. Once we're in, it's lockdown time. No room for mistakes. With a quick tap on the device, E placed it against the door's control panel. A soft hum vibrated through the air as the mechanism began to override the locking system. Angie stood ready as she scanned the corridor for potential threats. The moment the door clicked open, the entire vessel erupted into chaos. A piercing alarm blared through the vessel, accompanied by flashing red lights that painted the metallic walls in ominous hues. So much for subtlety, Angie muttered as she darted into the control room, leaving afterimages behind. Inside, the control room was a bustling hub of activity. Gustavo Alliance members of varying alien origins scrambled to respond to the alarm. The room was circular, with consoles lining the walls and a central holodeck displaying a three-dimensional map of the vessel and surrounding space. The pilots, seated at their stations, were of an insectoid species with exoskeletal armor and compound eyes that glinted under the red lights. Several others, a mix of reptilian humanoids with scaled skin and a towering four-armed being covered in jet-black fur, turned toward the intruders. Intruders, one of them hissed while raising a weapon. Before they could react, Angie was already among them. Her speed created a sonic boom that sent consoles crashing and chairs skidding across the floor. Her first target was the nearest pilot, whose clawed hand reached for a message switch that would have sent out an alarm outside of the vessel. With a quick strike to his thorax, she incapacitated him, sending him collapsing to the floor. Focus on the alarm. He yelled while opening a vortex in front of a reptilian humanoid, aiming a plasma rifle at Angie. The shot vanished into the vortex, reappearing behind the attacker and striking him in the back. Angie zipped to the next target, delivering a flurry of blows to the towering, four-armed being. He roared in pain, swinging his massive arms at her, but her movements were too fast for him to track. She dodged each swing with ease, delivering a powerful kick to his jaw that sent him crashing into a console. Nice hit, EE voiced while sidestepping a blast of energy from another attacker. He opened a portal beneath the attacker's feet, causing them to fall through and reappear upside down on the other side of the room. The remaining pilots attempted to draw their weapons, but Angie's blinding speed disarmed them in seconds. She tossed their weapons into a pile, which EE quickly teleported into deep space through another vortex. Control room secure, Angie voiced with steady breaths despite the intensity of the fight. EE moved to the main control panel, typing furiously as he worked to disable the alarm and lock down the engines. The alarm ceased abruptly, leaving only the sound of the vessel's machinery and distant shouts as more Gustavo Alliance members approached. Engines locked. Doors sealed. We're good, EE voiced while turning to Angie with a grin. Not quite, Angie replied while turning toward the door as it slid shut. Just before it closed completely, a Gustavo Alliance member slipped through, drawing both their attention. The newcomer was humanoid but covered in glowing silver tattoos that pulsed with energy. His eyes were an unnatural shade of orange, radiating malice, and his long, dark hair was tied back in a braid that swayed as he moved. He wore a black armor that seemed to buzz with an internal power source. You've made a grave mistake entering this vessel. His voice carried an unsettling resonance as he growled. I am Zal Ranvar, and I will personally see to your demise. Yeah, you're going to have to get in line, Zal. Eli smirked as he summoned a vortex beside him. Angie, shall we? Let's do it. Angie shot back, already blurring towards Zal. Zal moved with incredible speed, meeting Angie's charge head-on. Their clash sent shockwaves through the room, cracking the walls and shattering nearby monitors. Angie struck at his midsection with a flurry of punches, but Zal's armor absorbed most of the impact. He retaliated with a burst of energy from his tattoos, forcing her to retreat. E took advantage of the distraction, opening a vortex beneath Zal's feet. But Zal anticipated the move, leaping into the air and releasing another burst of energy that disrupted the vortex. Clever, but not clever enough. Zal sneered while lunging at E narrowly avoided the attack, opening a series of smaller vortexes to redirect Zal's strikes. One of Zal's energy blasts reappeared behind him, striking his armor and staggering him. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. The beam didn't just wound. It shrank the soldier's weapon to the size of a pebble, leaving him defenseless. Falco, on the other hand, lunged forward with his arm morphing into a dark blade. He ducked under a swipe from one of the insectoid soldiers, spinning to deliver a precise strike that severed one of its clawed arms. Messy enough for you, he quipped. Focus, Falco, Eldris barked, as he sent another wave of multicolored energy rippling through the corridor, sending several soldiers crashing into the walls. Despite their initial success, more soldiers poured into the corridor. In the control room, the battle between Angie, and Zal raged on. The room was a chaotic mess of shattered consoles, flickering holo displays, and the hum of failing systems. Zal stood in the center of the room as his silver tattoos glowed with an eerie light while he unleashed bursts of energy. His movements were quick and relentless. Angie blurred forward, creating shockwaves with her speed as she darted around Zal, aiming strikes at his midsection. But Zal anticipated her moves, his tattoos flaring as he conjured a barrier of shimmering energy that sent her flying backward. Standing near the control panel, opened a vortex in the path of Zal's next attack. The energy blast disappeared into the vortex, reappearing behind Zal, but he swiftly sidestepped, evading it. Don't take me for a fool. I learned from my mistakes, Zal growled while turning toward E. You're a pest, vortex boy. Let's see how well you fight up close. He lunged forward as his fists glowed with energy. E narrowly dodged the first punch, opening a vortex to teleport himself across the room. Angie, a little help here. Angie was already moving. She appeared behind Zal in an instant. She landed a powerful kick to the back of his knee, causing him to stagger. I've got you, vortex boy. Try to keep up, she voiced sarcastically, causing E to shudder. The two worked in tandem as Angie using her speed to keep Zal off balance, while E redirected his attacks with his spatial manipulation. Despite their efforts, Zal's power was immense, and his resilience made him a formidable opponent. Back in the corridors, Eldris, Alevra, and Falco were fighting desperately against the seemingly endless wave of Gustavo Alliance soldiers. The smell of burnt metal and the sound of energy blasts filled the vicinity. Alevra created a barrier of purple energy, shielding the group from an incoming volley of projectiles. We can't keep this up forever. We need a plan. Eldris' eyes narrowed. We push through. The commander has to be close. Falco, take point. Alevra, cover us. Let's move. Falco charged forward, slicing through the enemy ranks with his dark blade. Figures were smoothly cleaved in two, while Falco did his best to limit his power so as not to end up destroying the entire vessel from the inside out. Fortunately, he had managed to carve a path through the enemy ranks. Definitely, Falco replied, his grin widening as the tentacles tore another one guard in half, spraying the floor with viscous green liquid. Alevra sighed as her third eye glowed faintly. She slowly stepped past the carnage. You could have at least let us interrogate one of them. Now we'll never know what's waiting inside. Chapter 1618, Ominous Predicament. Chapter 1618, Ominous Predicament. Author's note. Unedited chapter, doesn't matter. We kick the door down. We deal with whatever's there, Falco said, the tentacles retracting into his body as he approached the massive door. ###, the commander's room. A scandalous scene. With a powerful kick, the heavy door burst open, revealing a sprawling, luxurious room. Unlike the rest of the ship, the commander's quarters were decadently adorned. Silken drapes in shades of crimson and gold hung from the walls, and the air was thick with the musky scent of burning incense. A massive circular bed sat in the center of the room, its silken sheets in disarray. On the bed, the commander, a towering reptilian humanoid with dark green scales and glowing yellow eyes, was entangled with two females of different species. One was a humanoid with soft, pink skin and pointed ears, while the other was an alien with shimmering, blue translucent skin and gills along her neck. Both were naked, their startled expressions frozen as they turned to face the intruders. ***, what in the? The commander roared, his voice a deep, guttural growl. He scrambled to grab a weapon from the bedside table, his movements clumsy in his panic. Falco stepped into the room, his dark hair falling over his face as he smirked. ***, well, this is awkward. Didn't mean to interrupt your little session. Who are you lots? Guards. The commander bellowed, his scales flaring as he reached for his communicator. ###, the confrontation. Before the commander could call for reinforcements, Elevra's third eye flared brightly, emitting a beam of purple energy that struck the communicator, shrinking it to the size of a pebble. It fell uselessly from his hand. ***, no guards are coming. Elevra said coldly, stepping forward. ***, they're all dead. Just like you'll be if you don't cooperate. The two females scrambled off the bed, grabbing sheets to cover themselves as they huddled in the corner. The commander rose to his full height, towering over the intruders. His yellow eyes glowed with rage as he flexed his claws. ***, you think you can barge into my quarters and threaten me? Do you know who I am? I'm Commander Graylix of the Gustavo Alliance. I've destroyed entire civilizations. Eldris, standing calmly in the center of the room, raised his hand. Swirls of color began to manifest around him, shimmering hues that danced and shifted like liquid light. ***, Graylix, was it? You're about to add loser to us to your impressive list, ***, Eldris said, his voice even and calm. ***, now sit down and answer our questions, or I'll paint this room with a new palette, one you won't enjoy. ###, the fight. Graylix roared, lunging at Eldris with surprising speed. His claws slashed through the air, but just before they connected, Eldris' colors surged forward, forming a shimmering barrier of light that absorbed the impact. ***, too slow, big guy, ***, Falco said, his dark tentacles shooting forward to wrap around Graylix's legs. He yanked hard, sending the commander crashing to the floor. Graylix snarled, his claws glowing with a fiery red energy as he slashed at the tentacles. They recoiled briefly, but Falco grinned. ***, you've got tricks. So do I. The tentacles surged back, wrapping around Graylix's arms and pinning him down. Elevra stepped forward, her third eye glowing with intensity. ***, this could have been simple, Graylix. Now you've just made it painful. She unleashed another beam of energy, this time striking Graylix's legs. They shrank to half their size, rendering him unable to stand. ***, release me. You have no idea what you're doing. The Gustavo Alliance will hunt you to the ends of the galaxy. Graylix roared, struggling against his restraints. Eldris walked closer, his multicolored barrier shimmering around him. We're not interested in your threats, Commander. We want information. Where is your base of operations? Where are the two leaders hiding? Graylix spat on the floor, his yellow eyes glaring defiantly. ***, I'll tell you nothing. Kill me if you want, but I won't betray the Alliance. Falco sighed dramatically, his tentacles tightening around Graylix's throat. ** Asterisk asterisk, you say that like you've got a choice. Let's see how long you can hold out. Elevra turned to Ildris. Asterisk asterisk, he's too arrogant to talk willingly. Let me shrink something important. Maybe then he'll reconsider. Gralix's defiance faltered, a flicker of fear crossing his face. Asterisk asterisk, you wouldn't dare. Asterisk asterisk, asterisk asterisk, try me. Asterisk asterisk, Elevra interrupted, her third eye glowing ominously. Hashtag 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 the interrogation. After a few more moments of threats and pressure, Gralix finally relented. Asterisk asterisk, fine. They'll tell you what you want to know. Just call off your freaks. Ildris leaned closer, his expression neutral but his multicolored eyes piercing. Asterisk asterisk, start talking, Commander. And don't leave anything out. Gralix growled, his voice bitter. Asterisk asterisk, the main base is in the Nebulan Expanse, hidden within an asteroid field. The two leaders you're looking for. I don't know their exact locations. They keep themselves hidden, even from us. Falco tightened the tentacles slightly. Asterisk asterisk, you're holding back, Commander. I can feel it. What else? Gralix hissed in frustration. Asterisk asterisk, there's a relay beacon in this ship's databanks. It contains encrypted coordinates for one of the leaders. But you'll never crack it. Elevra smirked. Asterisk asterisk, we'll see about that. Hashtag 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 the aftermath. As Gralix slumped in defeat, the team began accessing the ship systems, using the commander's biometric data to unlock restricted files. With the location of the relay beacon in hand, their mission was far from over. But they had taken the first step in dismantling the Gustavo Alliance. As the alarms finally fell silent, Ildris, Elevra, and Falco reached a massive reinforced door deep within the vessel. Ildris placed his hand on the door, feeling the faint energy signature behind it. Asterisk asterisk, the commander is in there. Asterisk asterisk, he said, his voice resolute. Asterisk asterisk, then let's finish this. Asterisk asterisk, Falco said, his energy blade glowing brightly. Elevra nodded, her third eye glowing as she prepared for the final confrontation. They knew the hardest part of their mission was yet to come. To be continued. Hashtag 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 the showdown with Commander Gralix. The spacious bedroom, once a place of indulgence and decadence, now crackled with destructive energy as Ildris, Elevra, and Falco faced off against Gralix, the towering reptilian commander of the Gustavo Alliance. The luxurious furnishings lay in shambles, shredded by beams of energy and the force of relentless attacks. Shattered glass and burning silken drapes added to the chaos, while the faint hum of the ship's energy systems remained a constant reminder of the looming danger. Gralix stood in the center, his massive frame radiating raw power. His glowing yellow eyes locked onto his opponents, and faint dark tendrils flickered across his body, confirming Falco's suspicion. The commander had tapped into nocturnus power. Asterisk asterisk, you dare to challenge me in my own quarters? Gralix roared, his voice deep and guttural, reverberating through the room. His claws crackled with fiery red energy, and his scaled body gleamed under the flickering light. Asterisk asterisk, you'll regret this. All of you. Hashtag 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 Ildris and Elevra's synchronized assault. Ildris and Elevra exchanged a brief nod, their silent understanding leading to a perfectly synchronized attack. Asterisk asterisk, let's clip his claws. Elevra asterisk asterisk, Ildris said, his voice calm yet commanding. He raised his hands, and the air around him shimmered as he began to draw colors from the environment. The glowing palette of hues materialized before him, swirling like a living spectrum. It pulsed with power, creating a suction force that pulled at everything in the room, matching its hues. Gralix staggered as sections of his body glowed and flickered, drawn toward the swirling palette. The suction force gripped him, causing his glowing tattoos to flicker erratically. Asterisk asterisk, what is this trickery? Gralix bellowed, struggling against the pull. Asterisk asterisk, focus on that. Why don't you? Elevra's voice rang out as her third eye flared. A concentrated purple beam shot forth, streaking toward the commander with devastating speed. Gralix growled, raising his clawed hand to meet the attack. His claws slashed through the air, slapping the beam away with a burst of energy. But the deflected beam doubled in size, twisting and morphing into a volatile sphere of energy. Asterisk asterisk incoming, Elevra yelled, diving for cover as the energy sphere exploded with a deafening roar. The explosion tore through the bedroom, blowing out one of the walls. The vacuum of space briefly threatened to engulf them before emergency barriers activated, sealing the breach. A thick cloud of smoke and debris filled the room. #### Falco takes center stage as the smoke cleared. Falco stood unscathed amidst the destruction. His dark hair hung over his forehead, and his piercing gaze locked onto Grelix, who stood panting, his scales charred in places but still exuding defiance. Behind Falco, Ildris and Elevra lay sprawled on the floor, bruised and slightly bloodied. Elevra clutched her side, wincing, while Ildris pushed himself up with a grimace. ***, you two rest. ***, Falco said coldly, not turning to look at them. ***, he's mine. Falco. ***, Ildris started, but Falco raised a hand to silence him. ***, no. I can feel it. Ildris, ***, Falco growled, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. Dark tendrils began to phase out of his body, writhing ominously. ***, that foul presence in him. It's my father's. He borrowed power from Nocturnus. Elevra's third eye flickered weakly as she looked up at him. ***, Falco. Don't. ***, but Falco was already moving. His dark tendrils surged forward, slicing through the debris as he lunged at Grelix. #### Falco's rage unleashed. Grelix barely had time to raise his claws before Falco's tendrils wrapped around his arms and legs, slamming him into the floor with a thunderous crash. The sheer force left cracks in the metallic surface. ***, you think you're powerful because of Nocturnus? You're nothing. ***, Falco snarled, his tendrils tightening around the commander like constricting serpents. Grelix roared, his tattoos glowing as he unleashed a pulse of red energy. The blast shattered Falco's tendrils, sending him skidding back. The commander rose to his feet, his scales glowing ominously as dark tendrils of his own began to emerge. ***, you underestimate me, boy. Nocturnus power flows through me. Grelix charged, his claws slashing toward Falco with blinding speed. Falco met the attack head-on, his dark powers manifesting as a shadowy shield that absorbed the brunt of the impact. The two clashed violently, their strikes creating shockwaves that shook the entire vessel. Falco's rage fueled his strength. He drove his knee into Grelix's midsection, sending the reptilian commander stumbling back. With a roar, he unleashed a wave of dark energy that engulfed Grelix, slamming him into the far wall. ###, the turning point. Grelix staggered to his feet, his breathing labored. His tattoos flickered, their glow dimming as his connection to Nocturnus power waned. ***, you can't win. ***, Falco said, advancing slowly. His tendrils writhed around him, ready to strike. ***, your borrowed power is nothing compared to mine. Grelix snarled, lunging forward in a desperate attempt to turn the tide. But Falco was ready. He sidestepped the attack and drove his fist into Grelix's chest, sending the commander crashing into the floor. Before Grelix could rise, Falco's tendrils pinned him down, wrapping around his arms, legs, and throat. The commander thrashed and roared, but he was no match for Falco's relentless assault. Falco's dark eyes glinted with fury as he raised a tendril, poised to deliver the killing blow. ***, you don't deserve to live. ***, he growled. ###Ildris intervenes. ***, Falco. Stop. Ildris' voice rang out, firm and commanding. Falco hesitated, his tendrils trembling as he turned to look at Ildris. ***, why? He's a servant of Nocturnus. He deserves to die. We need him alive. ***, Ildris said, stepping forward. His multicolored eyes glowed faintly as he spoke. ***, he has information we need. Killing him now would be reckless. Falco's grip tightened around Grelix, his jaw clenched in frustration. Asterisk asterisk he's a monster, Eldris. You didn't feel it like I did. Nocturnus presence. He's dangerous. And that's exactly why we need him alive. Asterisk asterisk, Eldris replied calmly. Asterisk asterisk if he's connected to Nocturnus, he might know more than we realize. Killing him won't solve anything. Falco growled low in his throat, but after a tense moment, he released the tendrils, letting them retract back into his body. Gralix lay on the floor, battered and gasping for breath. Hashtag the aftermath. Elevera limped forward, her third eye glowing faintly as she scanned Gralix. Asterisk asterisk he's weak now. He won't be a problem. Falco crossed his arms, glaring down at the commander. Asterisk asterisk had better start talking. Otherwise, I'm finishing what I started. Eldris crouched beside Gralix, his expression neutral. Asterisk asterisk you're going to tell us everything, Commander. Where are the leaders of the Gustavo Alliance? What's their connection to Nocturnus? And what's their endgame? Gralix coughed, his yellow eyes flickering with fear and defiance. Asterisk asterisk you think you've won? You have no idea what's coming. Then enlighten us, asterisk asterisk Eldris said, his voice cold. Asterisk asterisk, or I'll let my friend here finish what he started. Gralix hesitated, his gaze shifting between Eldris and Falco. Finally, he sighed, defeated. Asterisk asterisk fine. I'll talk. The team exchanged glances, knowing this was only the beginning of uncovering the Gustavo Alliance's secrets. SSS Uncle Bila watched in amazement as Gustav interacted with the newly revived NID. The artifact, long dormant and silent within the depths of the Vertigan vaults, now pulsed with a vibrant, mystical energy. Mr. Crimson, to use the, don't worry, I understand how it works, Gustav cut Uncle Bila off. He placed his palm flat against the NID, and the device responded immediately, its surface shimmering with an ethereal glow. The rhythmic pulsing seemed to sync with Gustav's energy, creating a resonance that filled the room with a palpable sense of anticipation. Gustav's thoughts were singular. I need to find a way to get to the remnants of planet Humbad. He held on to this intention, willing the NID to provide a path forward. After a few tense moments, the artifact responded. A projection of shimmering letters floated in the air before them, Planet Agon. Gustav stepped back, his surprise evident. Agon? That's the name Miss Amy calls her planet. The room fell silent as the NID powered down, its task seemingly complete. Uncle Bila, breaking the silence, confirmed what the machine had implied. It seems that whatever you need, Gustav is tied to planet Agon. According to our ancestors, the NID has never been wrong. Gustav, puzzled, murmured to himself, but why there? What could be on Miss Amy's planet that relates to Humbad or the warp demolator? Miss Amy's planet was still very new, so it didn't make any sense to him. Stark chimed in, remember, Miss Amy isn't just your former master. She's a creator of worlds, a manipulator of cosmic scales. There is every possibility that she has foresight of the current predicament. The idea resonated with Gustav, but he was still skeptical about it. You might be right. I guess the only way to find out is by heading there. I'll arrange for transport, Stark voiced in response, and I'll gather some supplies for your journey, Uncle Bila added. I need to find a way to send a message. An intergalactic message, Gustav requested. Days had passed since the warp demolator's appearance and subsequent disappearance, leaving Eldris, Endrick, Falco, and Rhea adrift in uncertainty. They had been scouring the coordinates and searching for any trace of Gustav, their efforts fruitless and their morale dwindling. As they prepared to set a course for a nearby planet in hopes of finding assistance, the console beeped loudly, signaling an incoming transmission that immediately drew their attention. Falco, who was closest to the console, quickly tapped to accept the transmission. The familiar face of Gustav appeared in full vibrancy. Hey guys. The group exchanged looks of relief, mixed with confusion upon his appearance. Rival, we've searched everywhere. Where did you vanish to? Rhea was the first to yell out. I'm on Earth, Gustav revealed. You're on Earth. How did you end up there? Falco voiced in shock. It's Stark's doing. It's a long story, I'll fill you in later. But I'm all right. We thought we lost you. How are you going to get back? Eldris inquired. I'm not coming back just yet. I'm actually about to head to Miss Amy's planet, Agon. His revelation prompted a round of surprised murmurs among the group. Miss Amy's planet? Why? Endrick voiced in bafflement. It's related to something called the NID. An artifact pointed me to Agon. I think it's crucial for what comes next. Since I missed the warp demolator's appearance, this might be the only way I get to planet Humbat. The group listened intently as Gustav briefly explained his encounter with the NID and its mysterious guidance. So, what do you need us to do now? Head to the Milky Way to join you? Eldris inquired. No, that won't be necessary. You're over a month away, and I can't have you trailing behind that long. Instead, I need you to fix up my ship. I believe by the time you're heading back, I will have gotten what I need. Okay, we could help with other things while you do what needs to be done, Endrick answered with a nod. Thanks. I'll keep you posted on my progress and what I find out on Agon. As the transmission faded, the crew sat back, processing the flurry of information. Gustav was safe, but he would have to tread alone on the journey ahead of him. They turned their attention to the task at hand, repairing Gustav's spacecraft and finding their way back without mishaps. We are gonna head for Earth afterwards, right? Rhea asked. You bet we are. Gustav and Stark stood in the dimly lit hangar, their spacecraft prepped and ready for departure. The air thrummed with the low rumble of the engines warming up, a subtle vibration underfoot that spoke of the power at their disposal. Beside them, two bodyguards in silver robes, their features obscured by the high collars and hoods, stood silent and alert. Gustav, checking over his disguise, a similar silver robe that masked his identity, nodded towards Stark. It's time to go. Although Gustav didn't shapeshift due to the numbers seeing Stark off, he knew he wouldn't shy away from it when the time came. Stark, adjusting his gear, looked at Gustav with a mix of excitement and apprehension. What should I expect out there, Gustav? It's not every day one travels to a planet crafted by a goddess. Honestly, it's hard to say what we'll find. Miss Amy is unpredictable. But if there's one thing I'm sure of, it's that she's continued creating life. She aims to craft a world far different from Earth's, full of diversity and harmony. Gustav responded with a reminiscent look. As they boarded the spacecraft, the bodyguards took their positions at the controls, and Gustav settled next to Stark. The bay doors slowly retracted. With a smooth surge of power, the spacecraft lifted off, leaving Earth's atmosphere in a streak of light. As they ascended, Gustav's mind drifted to his past interactions with Miss Amy. He remembered the lush landscapes she had shown him, teeming with life, creatures of her design, each species more fascinating than the last. Miss Amy stood before a sprawling vista, her hand sweeping over a field dotted with two-headed creatures grazing under a colorful sky. Here, she had said, I will create a sanctuary where all the life forms I create can coexist in balance. A model of what any world could be, free from strife and inequality. Gustav felt a pang of nostalgia and a deep-seated curiosity about how much her world had evolved since his last visit. He pulled himself back to the present as their ship broke free from Earth's gravitational pull and entered the open cosmos. Space travel still amazes me every time, Stark mumbled while peering forward. He started intently at every nook and cranny of the exterior of the spacecraft. How far until we reach Agon? Gustav questioned. We're looking at just over a day's journey with the current hyperdrive settings since Agon is situated at the edge of the Milky Way, Stark answered informatively. The journey through space was smooth, with the vast starlit void offering a display of serene beauty. Stark occasionally attempted to draw out more stories from Gustav, who remained somewhat reticent, lost in his thoughts. You respect her, don't you? Miss Amy, more than respect, Stark. I owe her my life. I was hoping I wouldn't need her help anymore until all this was over, but I guess there is no other way, Gustav voiced with a look of admiration and perturbation. As they neared Agon, the planet's image began to fill the viewport, a colossal world, its surface swirling with vibrant colors and cloud patterns that hinted at its dynamic atmosphere. There it is. Agon, Gustav announced. Wow, it truly is 4 times the size of Earth. Very breathtaking. To think one being could create all this, it's beyond what I thought possible. Stark couldn't imagine just how powerful Miss Amy was. Although he had very much witnessed her might at Aesop, it was an entirely different scenario to physically be in the presence of an orbital body she created. The spacecraft's approach was carefully calculated as they prepared for descent. As their spacecraft approached the vibrant, swirling atmosphere of Agon, Gustav and Stark were suddenly jolted by an unexpected resistance. A shimmering barrier, invisible until now, materialized just as their ship was about to enter the planet's orbit. Stark, startled by the sudden halt, looked over at Gustav with concern. What's happening? Why can't we move forward? Gustav's brow furrowed in confusion and surprise as he responded, This wasn't here before. Miss Amy must have later put this in place to prevent external entry. But she should be aware of my presence by now. Why isn't she taking the barrier down? Gustav wondered out loud. It was impossible for anything to pass by Miss Amy since she became a goddess, so Gustav had expected her to have sensed their spacecraft long before it got to that point. Trying to understand the situation, Gustav instructed the ship's AI to attempt a gentle push forward, but the barrier remained impassive, its surface repelling every advance with increasing force. Let's not force it. We might damage the ship, or worse, trigger a countermeasure we're not prepared for. Chapter 1619 Worldwide Sorrow. Chapter 1619 Worldwide Sorrow. Author's Note. Unedited chapter. Ellen looked troubled. But how? The unrest is growing, and people are losing faith. Frambolton took a deep breath. I will address the people and call for a summit of all leaders and factions. We need to come together, now more than ever. The playback showed scenes of unrest and division across planet Humbad. Protests erupted in the streets, clashes broke out between opposing factions, and fear and uncertainty spread like wildfire. It looked like history was repeating itself once again. In one scene, Gustav watched as a group of dissenters gathered in a secluded space. Their faces were filled with anger and frustration, their voices hushed but intense. We cannot trust Frambolton the 88th, one of them said with a tone of conviction. His methods are weak, and our survival is at risk. We need strong leadership to protect us. But what can we do? Another asked, her voice trembling. The barrier is failing, and we are running out of time. Kaldor spoke up. We need to take decisive action. If Frambolton will not lead us well, then we must lead ourselves. We must find a way to restore true unity, one built on strength and resolve. As the unrest grew, the barrier continued to weaken. The ashy sand-like matter pressed harder against it, the dark force swirling and writhing, seeking a way through. The cracks continuously spread. Frambolton the 88th addressed the people from the Great Hall. My fellow Slarkovs, we face an existential threat. The barrier that protects us is failing because of the divisions among us. Let us put aside our differences and work together to restore our unity and strengthen the barrier. The summit of all leaders and factions began in the Great Hall. Representatives from all sides gathered around a large table. Frambolton the 88th opened the summit with a heartfelt plea for unity. We are all Slarkovs, he began, his voice steady but impassioned. We all want the same thing, to protect our world and ensure our survival. The barrier keeps failing because we are divided. We must find a way to come together, to work as one. Tarek, a community leader, spoke up. We need to address the root causes of our division. People feel marginalized. Not everyone is satisfied with the Frambolton leadership. We must ensure that all voices are heard and that our society is built on cooperation. Kaldor, the fierce dissenter, countered. We need strong leadership, not appeasement. The barrier is failing because we are weak. We must take decisive action to protect our people. The debate continued, with each side presenting their views and concerns. As the summit progressed, Frambolton the 88th worked tirelessly to mediate and find common ground. He listened to each side, offering compromises and solutions. Slowly, some progress was made, and a tentative sense of hope began to emerge. In one scene, Gustav watched as from Bolton the 88th met with Tarek and Kaldor in a private chamber. The atmosphere was tense, but there was a glimmer of understanding. Tarek, Kaldor, from Bolton said, his voice sincere, "I know we have different views on how to protect our people, but we must find a way to work together. The barrier is failing, and our survival depends on our unity." Tarek nodded. "I agree, Chief from Bolton. Unity is our objective." Kaldor, though still defiant, softened slightly. "I understand the need for unity, but we must also be strong and decisive. We cannot afford to be weak." From Bolton smiled, a sense of relief washing over him. "Then let us find a way to balance strength with compassion. Together, we can restore our unity and protect our world." "The only way that works is if you step down as chief." Kaldor's words caused his smile to vanish instantly. "But why?" Chief from Bolton the 88th questioned with a low tone. "It is quite obvious that your methods have failed to foster peace and unity whereas your fathers worked. The Slarkovs need a decisive leader that will continue your father's legacy, not some weak-willed leader who is unwilling to get his hands dirty," Kaldor stated with a strong look of disgust. "And if I were to step down, who would take on the mantle of leadership?" From Bolton the 88th inquired. "I shall," Tarek stated. "Shut up, Tarek. You're clearly too not eligible. I will take up the mantle," Kaldor voiced with a condescending look. "And what is the first thing you will do when you step into power?" From Bolton the 88th questioned. "I will get rid of every single Slarkov who disagree with the methods of our previous chief. The barrier will no longer weaken if everyone that is left remains under the same banner of agreement." He, Kaldor pointed out. "If that is the case, then, no, I will not be stepping down. I have sworn to put an end to the ruthless tactic my father used during his reign, and I will make sure it never happens again." Immediately after saying this, from Bolton the 88th turned around to leave. "Toy, you're a disgrace to your father's name." Kaldor spat in his direction with a tone of disgust. "Be that as it may, I will not let Humbad be ruled by tyranny," from Bolton stated before completely leaving the scene. Soon, the situation on planet Humbad reached a critical juncture. Despite from Bolton the 88th's best efforts to heal the divisions within Slarkov society, the unrest continued to rise at an alarming rate. The barrier, weakened by the lack of unity, began to falter more visibly. Its light flickered under the relentless pressure of the ashy, sand-like matter. From Bolton stood in the command center, his expression grave as he observed the holographic display of the barrier. The cracks were spreading faster now, and the dark force outside seemed more determined than ever to consume their world. He knew that if they did not find a solution soon, the end of their species was inevitable. He gathered his advisors for an emergency meeting in the Great Hall. The atmosphere was tense, the weight of their dire situation pressing heavily on everyone present. "My friends," from Bolton began, his voice steady but filled with urgency, "we are facing an existential threat unlike any we have encountered before. The barrier is failing, and the unrest among our people is tearing us apart. We must find a way forward, or we will be consumed along with our planet." Serene, the seasoned advisor, spoke up. "Chief from Bolton, we need to consider all options. If we cannot restore unity and strengthen the barrier, we may need to evacuate the planet." Ellen, the young and passionate advisor, looked conflicted. "But where would we go? This has been our home for millennia. Leaving would be an admission of defeat." From Bolton nodded, his expression resolute. "I understand your concerns, Ellen, but we must prioritize the survival of our species. I have made a difficult decision. We will prepare to evacuate the planet." The advisors exchanged uneasy glances, but they knew that their leader was right. The unrest was too deep-rooted, the divisions too entrenched. Staying on Humbad would only lead to their extinction. From Bolton addressed the people of Humbad in a broadcast from the Great Hall. His voice echoed through the city, reaching every corner of their world. "My fellow Slarkovs, we face a grave threat. The barrier that protects us is failing, and our unity is crumbling. We have tried to heal our divisions, but the unrest continues to rise. For the survival of our species, we must make a difficult decision. We must prepare to leave our beloved planet." The announcement sent shockwaves through Slarkov society. Families gathered around screens, their faces filled with fear. Gustav watched as the playback showed scenes of the reactions across Humbad. In one scene, a group of Slarkovs gathered in a public square, their expressions a blend of anxiety and hope. "Leaving our home," one of them said, their voice trembling. "It feels like giving up." Another Slarkov, an elder with wise eyes, placed a reassuring hand on their shoulder. "It is not giving up," they said gently. "It is choosing to survive. We carry the spirit of Humbad within us, wherever we go." However, the decision to evacuate was not universally accepted. The Slarkovs had divided into two factions. One faction, led by Chief from Bolton the 88th, agreed with the decision to leave the planet for their betterment. The other faction, led by Kaldor and his followers, believed that they should stay behind and force Dimension 6 open, hoping to employ its power once more. In a heated debate in the Great Hall, representatives from both factions argued passionately. "Leaving the planet is cowardice," Kaldor shouted, his voice filled with conviction. "We must force Dimension 6 open and use its power to protect ourselves. Abandoning our home is not the answer." From Bolton, the 88th remained calm but resolute. "Kaldor, we have tried to reason with Dimension 6. It has locked itself away. Our priority must be the survival of our species, and that means evacuating." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.